whatever that is, like trivia.
You're pretty miserable. Oh, pretty good.
Yes, thank you.
It is actually pretty
Yeah.
We had a lot of fun. Conditional
The
is
Thai
were not
restaurant,
awesome.
they know us too.
They were
Oh,
having
we
snared
both
in a
like
few
home.
weeks.
like that. You
I
saw
don't
it.
think I like him.
But as
Because
we
I don't like
You know,
there,
Their back previous owners, and we like her.
they,
between
And
this
we've
company.
done
everything gets really bumped up.
She's still
Which
good.
I usually don't care if they're
Yep,
soft or.
some of dad,
Speech
my mom,
therapy,
sister,
that's
really
I'm trying to get my mouse on here.
You know, I can't get mine going either. She figured out that my mouth is like her
So
machine. Trying
that
to
doesn't make it fun for the rest of the family.
I can't get any mouth.
They've been the first
Care for it.
I have. I mean,
Oh,
I mean, they
really?
do do
Wow.
the right
Yeah.
buttons. Man, some of these pumps.
what I found is that turn them off. Turn them
I
off.
think it's big.
Mine, I always find mine wouldn't.
Oh, yeah.
Do that, but I didn't get my mouse to work at all. It's the last one.
Yeah, I remember that.
I still had fun with it. Maybe for another couple of years.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Now that
He
I
was,
They'd be better off
he was
with
so fun.
tethered license.
We had like 12 adults watching him.
Almost bring my own.
One kid.
Like that.
We took the long.
So I don't know if either one of these work on yours, but.
Kelly,
Yeah.
can I make I don't think it's on your suggestion for these laptops.
Good old Tracy.
Yeah.
If we had Adobe Reader,
We got snow.
we can pull up the bookmarks
Yeah.
of these long PDFs and pop around.
Yeah.
But
That's
Picture ever load.
it's not.
I don't think you can't put Adobe Reader on a Google Chrome computer, I don't believe.
Yeah. Yeah, we had.
These are
Are these
Chromebooks?
Chromebooks?
I have one at home. The only thing you can put on is Microsoft products. Or Google products, sorry. No, we want to take that.
Oh.
So you can't load, yeah, you can't put Microsoft on here, you can't put PDFs, you can't put Adobe.
How was your Easter?
Viewing.
Oh, it's good.
Oh, we've all had problems with these
You
today.
can use,
She's a little cranky right now.
Did you turn it off and on again? That's what he did.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was super.
Is that mouse working for you?
and you might
That mouse is working for you?
Yeah.
the Google
But the other one worked for me too. The one that I gave you worked for me too, so I don't know how that
Used to
works.
get down
That-
to Nevada and kind of
Yeah,
short hops.
I have one of these computers, a couple,
Couple
they're very
days
limited
back.
with what they can do.
What about the mice have not been fed?
The mice have not
I don't
been
know,
fed.
it's not my room, so
Ah.
I'll pass along the information.
Because
Walk around.
Watch a movie.
we're trying to go paperless with you, but we,
Well, dude, none of these decisions are my decisions.
I don't
no, but I'm saying
Mine,
this,
mine don't work. Mine didn't work
Yeah.
last week,
Yeah.
last time either.
Do it a lot.
so we're trying to work off of
I'm gonna bring
here.
my
So
own
you know
mouse
what?
with the tail
I'll
next
pass the
time
information along.
and just plug it in.
Right.
Go upstairs and tell Carrie in
Yeah, I
the,
can pass
I
it.
had to
Yeah.
do that for hours.
Yeah, the
on
Google
my regular
Chromes
computer.
are what we're kind of stuck with for this time being. So if you go to this. Bookmarks, and now click the bookmarks. I don't know.
This is, there's only.
Yeah, there's only
wait,
two.
no, wait, no, this,
No, no.
okay, there we go.
Yeah, so you have to use, if you're doing anything on these computers, it has to be Google Chrome based. It has to be Google based.
Okay, see, this is, you can get to the different
Yeah.
things.
But it won't bring you to different spots in the document. It'll just bring you to the different exhibits.
Oh,
Again, what are they in there, on double A's or single A's? I can see if we have any.
They're triples.
Triples? How many are in each one?
But it looks like there's, I mean, they're going.
I always have to wake mine up by poking it.
Mine
took me a few minutes. I mean, there's a couple batteries right here, I don't know if it works.
So I just gotta make it happen. I apologize.
Hey Dawn, is your mouse working?
on
Dawn.
my campus,
Is your mouse working?
is it your
No.
email?
No.
As the
No,
username,
it's,
or
Let's try one of these
it's
batteries.
not letting me?
I don't know.
What I find, first of all, you have to turn it on and off once in a while to wake it up.
Down here.
But this thing is not working.
Well,
It
my
just
mail is
doesn't
open.
happen.
So,
It's got a light in it, so I.
Somebody was moving it.
Somebody's mouse is moving mine.
Is that moving it?
Yes.
Is that mine doing
Last time
it?
I didn't even turn it.
Really? You want mine?
Mine works too.
Somebody had fun in here messing with
I was
them.
wondering what was happening.
No, I saw.
Now somebody's controlling mine.
That's me. Is this you? Is it moving in circle?
Moving a little tiny bit. Yeah.
We must have the same,
No, it's
Mouse
just at the same time
shit.
they are what they are.
That might be doing mine now.
It's not
And
like
we
that.
also have
That one, that work. Is that new? Was it that
Yep.
kind before?
What?
Yep.
well, see, if they start switching, these are more, if they start passing them around.
Yeah, I have nothing.
So, yeah, the continuance.
So if you put a number on this,
Right, yeah, that'd be a good
that
idea.
might be a way, but still, this thing doesn't work here.
So we'll have to do that.
Force it to pair again.
So you can't talk about this.
I can't. I'm not saying a word.
Chance I might
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's continue.
Right there's the
Am
curve.
I doing you again?
You're killing me.
Am I?
You're killing me. You know what? Let me pull up the PDF. Yep, forget it.
Sure,
It's
on this
gone.
other side, that's what Ron has it on.
We got another
What do we got? His mouse is
Force,
good
it'll
here.
force it Pretty to much.
Do you hear that?
recognize it's a new device.
Ron and I were having the same problem a few minutes ago.
I wonder whose garage door I just opened.
There you go.
So-
So the, for some reason, the little thing has to be on the right side, it's on the left. I guess.
I think I'm controlling John.
So we got Dawn's working.
Nah, I'm gonna borrow Todd's.
You can have mine.
Since
I'm good.
I can't do anything anyway.
For once, all this is good.
Yeah, dude.
Everybody else is working?
Well, yep, it is now. I just took his, but that one right there will
But I'm
control
controlling his.
Ron's. That controls Ron's.
That's the master.
You can even try my
That's a different mouse, isn't it?
They're paired.
So am I controlling yours?
No, he can control yours.
I'm controlling yours now, right?
No, I took Todd's.
Oh, yeah, you-
He can't do anything.
No, it's working on
He has to
this side.
recuse
It
himself.
has to be plugged in on this side.
Yeah, that's where it was.
Yeah, it's working out for him, for Todd.
It was working, but he was controlling it too.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not a mouse expert.
Okay.
So there we were.
Like a 6-page letter just now. Yeah, I mean, it definitely contradicts a lot of his arguments in his other land use act he just submitted us. Which is kind of interesting. Just kind of interesting as well.
There is one there, it just doesn't cover clothing in the building. It covers the area where you're in orbit. But, so this is in condition, but this
You
is
got a new roll tonight, James?
I couldn't find it.
I can do it.
Code. So
I mean, you're all here, so it's a pretty easy roll call.
No, I mean, do you have a new role?
Oh, no.
No, Rebecca's sick.
covered in your staff report.
Okay, we ready to roll?
These are all typos.
Yeah, I think so.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the City of Sandy Planning Commission monthly meeting for April 22nd, 2019. Welcome you all here. We will jump right in and get going with the roll call.
Commissioner Carlton,
President.
Commissioner Lasowski,
Here.
Commissioner McLean Wenzel.
Here.
You don't even have your name out there. Commissioner Logan,
Here.
Commissioner Mobley,
Here.
Commissioner Mayton,
Here.
and Chairman Crosby.
Here. Okay, we had in our packets the minutes from February 25th meeting. Any additions, corrections need to be made there? I don't have them right in front of me to know who was here.
Everybody
This is
but
for the
Ron.
25th meeting, which was the one,
I was not here.
Yeah, Ron
this
wasn't
is the
here,
one that's a
everybody
month
else
ago
was.
that we looked at the March meeting. Didn't we approve them? Or did we wait?
No, we didn't approve that.
Okay, so we still don't have the minutes for the March meeting, I need to correct.
No.
Okay, we need any motion on February 25th meeting. Minutes.
I'll move to approve the minutes from the February 25th meeting.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the February 25th meeting minutes. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay.
I abstain.
We'll get identity straightened out.
Rebecca cannot be here, so.
All right, this is the time each of our meetings when we give opportunity for anybody in the audience who's here tonight that would like to just give citizen comment to the planning commission on an item that is not on the agenda tonight. We'll ask that you come to the podium. First person gets to straighten the microphone out and state your name and your address for the record, and we'll have anybody who gives testimony tonight will do that, name and address. So if you have just here tonight, just have a general comment to the commission, we invite you to step to the podium now. Okay, nobody moving in that direction. We have one public hearing tonight for new business, there's no old business, and we will begin by opening this public hearing at 7:03. This is file 18-057, design review, conditional use permit, Dutch Brothers. Begin calling for any abstention from any member of the hearing of the commission.
I have to abstain again from this hearing. I'm the owner of Lancaster Engineering. We did some work on this for the applicant, so I have to abstain. Recuse myself.
All right, we understand. Any conflict of interest to state? Anybody? Okay, we'll call for any ex parte contact.
Chair, I had one. I received a phone call after I was appointed by two friends of a friend expressing opinions on this application.
Okay. Any questions or concerns for that? I think David had some comments on ex parte.
Sure. So I just want to clarify for all of you, there were emails, the ones that I'm aware of were from Mr. Halt, Dale Halt, that were sent to the city council as well as all planning commissioners. I'm just going to go through the dates. I think actually they were all, let's see. So there were 3 on April 10th. And there was testimony from Mr. Halt that just talked about the position that he felt that the hearing tonight needed to be rescheduled. He had concerns about the notice and also the timing of the notice. And there were just some follow-ups from staff as well as then Mr. Halt. And so I just wanted to be sure that, you know, this is one of those things where technically all of those are ex parte contacts. There were things that you received, information you received outside of the hearing, even if you didn't engage in the email. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew we have copies of those for the record. We're going to be talking about record issues and timing issues as the evening goes on tonight. There have been requests for continuances. So as I think many of you know, when you get that request at a first hearing, we have to continue the hearing or leave the record open. We can talk about that in a little bit, but the salient point I want to make about this is that these are available for anybody to review. And I just want to get the substance of them in the record, and that way all of you have technically declared that ex parte contact. The other issue I just wanted to, I guess, a sort of a follow-up from that, were there any commission members that it's okay if you did? We just need to make sure we get that on the record too. Did anybody reply to those emails or have any other discussions with?
To the individual?
Yeah, to the individual or you know, to anybody, you know, that wouldn't have been, anybody outside of the hearing, basically? Nope?
No.
Okay. Were there any other emails that you received? I want to just clear the deck. It was a little unusual. We usually don't have that, so.
We received the email from Tracy Brown about an hour ago before the meeting started.
And that's happened in the past too.
And we've asked them not to do that.
Okay, so you also
That's the one you
received,
handed out.
But you've also.
Also asking for.
That's the one James handed out.
I believe so,
Yeah.
unless you guys received something else in addition to
No.
that.
No, I haven't looked at my
This is
city
the one.
email in a while.
okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that's been printed out and is part of the materials as well. But I just wanted to make sure we got that piece clarified.
So David, just to clarify then, if someone sends us an email about something coming before us, even if we don't respond to it, we say that's ex parte?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in this case, he actually sent it to staff and a separate one to planning commission, so if there was something different, we wouldn't even know.
Right. I mean, to be clear, there's not, people have a right to send emails to you, your public officials, and that's just part of the way it works. Ideally, people don't, because it leads to these issues of, okay, you got a hearing and you technically should avoid ex parte contacts. What I would say for the commission's benefit is that if you do receive direct emails, the best practice is not to respond, or at most, if you feel like a response, just to be, polite or courteous is necessary, to say, we've been advised by the city attorney that this is a matter that's coming before us in a hearing, and not to engage in ex parte contacts. You may bring that issue up at the hearing, and we can talk about it then, something like that.
Okay, perfect, thanks.
Yeah, sometimes it's difficult to know when you see it coming in your inbox, whether it's just a personal note or what, and, you have to read a sentence or two.
And that's the reason they're not prohibited, because sometimes you can't even avoid them, but you as we've talked about before, and these are not like getting approached in the grocery store or having a phone call. Those are pretty obvious, but they're a little subtler, but they still technically are, it's information you're getting from basically a third party, not staff, outside of this hearing tonight. So.
Good, thank you. Okay, everybody's familiar with the location of the property? Any challenges to the jurisdiction of the planning commission? Or any challenge to any individual member of the planning commission? Okay, if you testify, you must raise all issues at this hearing. Your comments should state why the application should or should not be approved, or include proposed modifications you believe are necessary for approval according to the standards. If you do not raise specific issues at the final evidentiary hearing, or by close of the record, or fail to provide statements or evidence to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue, you will not be able to appeal the decision to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that particular issue. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Any party has the right to request a continuance of the public hearing, or in the alternative, to have the record remain open. Staff report.
All right, so before us we have file number 18-057. We're going to start by kind of going through the applicable criteria. So the Sandy Municipal Code, section 17.12, procedures for decision making, 17.18, processing applications, 17.22, notices, 17.28, appeals, 1742, Central Business District, that's the underlining zone district, 17.66, adjustments and variances, 17.68, conditional uses, 17.84, improvements with development, 17.90, that's our design standards section, 17.92, landscaping and screening, 17.94, drive-through uses, which is the conditional use being requested, 17.98, parking, loading, and access requirements, 17.100, land division, and chapter 15.30, dark sky ordinances. Identified in red is the subject property. We all kind of just confirmed that we're aware of the proximity and the surrounding properties. So today before us we have 5 separate requests that you're hearing today. So the first one is a land partition, which is a minor partition, to divide the subject property into 2 individual lots of record. A conditional use to permit a drive-through facility, as well as 3 special variances. One is to have the primary structure be approximately 18 feet setback when the C1 zone district requires a maximum of 10. Variance B would be to incorporate a flat roof with parapets rather than the 612 roof pitch that's required within the C1 zone district. And variance C is to reduce the required 50% building frontage to 23%. So I'm going to start with the proposed partition. Outlined in red are the proposed 2 separate parcels. Right now, the parcel is kind of a little bit of an L shape. It fronts both Proctor as well as Pleasant Street. The proposal includes to subdivide that northeast portion off into its own, so that would front Pleasant Street, as well as the new parcel 1 would front Proctor Street. So they both would gain access on those 2 frontages. Both of the parcels meet the requirements as far as size, frontage for the C1 zone district, so staff is recommending approval for that minor partition. The conditional use for the property, the primary use is going to be an eating and drinking establishment. The conditional use being proposed is for a drive-through facility. The proposed tenant is a Dutch Brothers, which by definition would fall under the short-term food service. The short-term food services are kind of like ice cream shops or kind of these drive-through kind of facilities that pretty much cater to kind of like one specific good, I would say. So looking at the neighboring properties, to the east we have a 7-Eleven convenience store. To the south we have a fueling station. To the west we have another fueling station as well as a retail mattress store. To the north we'll have the vacant lot. Right now there isn't a proposal for that. As well as we have a legal non-conforming single-family home as well as an office building just to the northeast of that. So based upon the kind of surrounding uses, we see a lot of kind of auto-oriented uses, kind of for quick uses as well. People aren't typically lingering at 7-Elevens and fuel stations. So kind of based upon that and then some of the mitigations that they're doing through landscaping, we kind of see this as an approvable use for that space. So we're recommending approval for the conditional use as well. So variance A for the 3 different special variances that they're requesting. The first one is to have a setback of 18 feet versus the maximum 10. As you can see looking at this, they have the drive-through queue line wrapping in between the primary structure and the frontage. The intent of that is to provide adequate stacking queue. So that does push the primary structure back a little bit further from the actual right-of-way. If you can see on there, it does have a canopy for the drive-through, so that canopy will actually be a little bit more than 2 feet from the property line. So it does have that element to it, but the actual primary structure is 18 feet back. So we'll have a structure feature within the 10 feet. However, without being approved for the conditional use, we weren't okay with supporting the variance by itself. So that's variance A, but we do support it. So proposed variance B is to incorporate a flat roof with parapets when the code does require the 612 roof pitch. As you can see, these are the elevations that they show. They do have the pitched roof at the required 612 pitch for both the parapet as well as the covered pedestrian areas, and then a flat roof for the main portion. There is an exception for buildings extending beyond 50 feet that can have a flat roof with parapets. However, this one does not extend beyond 50 feet. When you add the 41 feet 3 inches in length of the building plus a 16-foot cover, it does extend over that 50. So that equates to a total of 33% frontage. That's the primary structure plus the covered pedestrian. With just the building, it's at 23. With the cover, it's at 32% of frontage, which the code requires 50. And again, staff notes that the 2 features for the drive-through as well as the pedestrian cover both have those elements. And the intention of having that flat roof is to be able to screen the rooftop equipment, which would be a requirement for the pitched roof, becomes a little bit more difficult. So staff looking at this is supportive of it because they do add those features as well as are screening the rooftop equipment with the parapets. So moving to proposed variance C. That is to reduce the 50% frontage. As I was just explaining, the current length of it is 41 feet 3 inches, and it has the 16-foot covered civic area which would equate to a total of 33%. The main structure, again, is 23%. With the covered patio, it is 32%. Staff is, again, in support of this variance as well. Just a little bit about the proposed development. When looking at 1790, the design standards, they've included wainscoting, the horizontal siding that represents wood features. They have wood timber pillars with stone stacked at the bottom. They have metal brackets as well as timbers as well. So they've met and exceeded the design requirements for that. And then looking at the proposed landscape, they have gone above the 10% requirement, as well as I mentioned earlier, there is a legal non-conforming single-family home just to the north. If you notice on the top, the north end of this, they have included a plethora of trees as well as 6-foot shrubs. We did receive a public comment from those homeowners, I believe, or they're at least the tenants, regarding the fence, and I think the applicant has spoken with them about potentially repairing the fence. They can speak to that a little bit more during their testimony. So based upon that, staff recommended approval for all 3 of the variances, with the stated conditions identified in section 4 of the attached staff report. We did recommend approval for the conditional use due to its complementary of the eating and drinking establishment, as well as complementary to the surrounding uses. We also did recommend approval for the minor partition in that it does meet the requirements of the C1 zone district. And then we did have various conditions associated with the approval that were located within section 4. We did receive 2 requests for continuances, one on April 18th, as well as one this afternoon. And as David expressed during a first reading, that will be granted. And then I'm not sure as of when that will be rescheduled, but I'm sure additional conversation will be had about that. With that, staff is complete.
All right, any questions of staff right now? Okay.
I guess my only question is I shared a note kind of earlier. I was just curious on your recommendation number 6, just to clarify the condition for redesign on the north elevation to include a pedestrian shelter.
Yeah, that should have been eliminated.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. On to applicant presentation.
You gotta earn it.
Good evening. My name is Braden Bernard. I'm with Cole Valley Partners.
What was your name again? I'm sorry.
Braden Bernard.
Okay, thank you.
Gave you my address.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, for the record.
504 Southwest 18th Avenue, Portland, Oregon. 972. So I'll try to be brief. I'm going to do a little introduction to who we are, a little introduction to the site, how we can acquire it, an overview of Dutch Bros Coffee, which I'm sure maybe you are familiar with, and then a little overview on the proposed development of both the building and the site. So we are Cole Valley Partners, the 3 of us. My colleague Zach and Ryan. We're a small-scale retail developer based in Portland. We primarily work on sites like this, kind of infill, smaller retail uses across the West Coast. We've worked a lot with Dutch Bros in the past. We've worked to refine their prototype over the years to make it more energy efficient and efficient of the building overall. So we're very familiar with the concept of the building, and also trying how to fit drive-throughs into complex, often small infill sites. We are based around Portland. Throughout the course of construction, we do the site a lot. We're very hands-on developer. We purchased this site in October from the previous owner. This site, as in our report in phase 1, is a former petroleum storage and retail site that's been vacant since 1989. Throughout the 90s and 2000s, it's sort of had a litany of DEQ cleanups. finally resulted in a no further action letter in 2005. Since we acquired the site in October, we've completed it independently at phase 1, and following the recommendations of phase 1, we completed phase 2, which took care of some of the concerns around the undocumented fill. And at this point, the phase 2's only recommendation is to move forward with the DEQ with a contaminated media management plan, a CMMP. That is almost finalized. And our consultants been talking to the DEQ weekly and nearing completion of that process. And then just from a civic standpoint, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the site. It's kind of a key thought of frontage right as you enter Sandy's commercial corridor from the east. The shared access is existing with the 7-Eleven. There's already an easement for that, and we're planning on utilizing that access as well. And just to kind of, James kind of addressed a lot of this, and we worked fairly closely with the city of Sandy throughout this process. We didn't want to come in here with something that was not already pretty tuned into what the city had outlined in their zoning. I think the wraparound drive-through, ideally minimizes any possible negative externalities that the drive-through use could have onto a public right-of-way. And this is plenty of queuing. I think it's at least 15 or so cars can fit in there. We also think it kind of minimizes the visualness of the drive-through. The little, I call it the ODOT bump, it's the little bump as you leave the drive-through. That allows cars to enter the highway perpendicularly, which was a safety concern ODOT had, and we integrated into our site plan early on. There's fairly sufficient sidewalks throughout the site that allows the Dutch Bros employees who do not take, there's no menu board, the Dutch Bros employees take orders with an iPad, so the sidewalks wrapping around the drive-through are very important to keep the employees safe, and also any pedestrians that potentially keep that path in their car to the building, as well as an elevated pedestrian bridge between the right-of-way sidewalk and the covered patio space, kind of again make sure that pedestrians are not an afterthought in this development. We're not showing any biking infrastructure, but we're planning on adding at least 4 biking stalls, either by the ADA parking space or kind of out front in the landscape area near the pedestrian bridge. And then the landscaping, as we kind of showed in our plans, we have fairly ample landscaping in the parking lot, on the right-of-way, and on the back of the site to screen kind of any headlights, any noise implications as best as we can. In the building, the core of the building is fairly standard for Dutch Bros new prototype, which there are not a lot of them in Oregon. The Oregon source tend to be a lot smaller windmill buildings. And we kind of married this with the Sandy style through the articulations towards the street with the gable roof. A lot of natural materials, the timber, heavy timber, and the natural stones. And again, the raised concrete connection is not shown here in this rendering, but there'd be sort of more of a speed bump for cars leaving the drive-through, which would again make the pedestrian experience more seamless. The rest of the building is mainly made from PHE off-fiber cement and the metal. And then, as you can see, there's kind of a civic space, a fairly large patio space. It's much larger than the average patio built on a new Dutch Bros coffee shop. And again, that's kind of a gesture to hopefully this can be a space for people to actually hang out and not just, you can drive through if you like, and you can also hang out and get a coffee and or your bikes there and meet your friends. So, on that note, I'll turn it over to Abe Mentionfriend, who is will maybe the tenant of this building and the Dutch Bros for.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you. As you stated, I'm Abe Mentionfriend. Would you like my address?
Yep.
13833 Clackamas River Drive, Oregon City. Yeah, as you stated, I am a franchisee with Dutch Bros Coffee. I've been with the organization since '96, and it was kind of my intent tonight just to kind of share a little bit about the brand itself. And what I believe would be a positive partnership with Sandy. We started in '92. It's 2 brothers down in Grants Pass, Oregon, which I had the privilege of working alongside of Dane and Trav Boersma. Very much family-oriented business, strong roots in the community. Having worked for them for several years, we've kind of began looking into the idea of franchising. And so I am what would be known as a legacy franchisee, where we own our franchises and we live in or around the towns in which they operate. So currently I live in Oregon City. We currently have 5 locations, roughly 140 employees. It is our desire to begin business here in Sandy. You know, a little bit about myself. We moved up here in 2005. We opened up our first location, my wife and I, and since we have had 7 kids. Very much love chasing the kids. Our company, Dutch Bros, as many of you may or may not know, is a very family-oriented, very family-friendly business. And so having been part of this company and been involved with schools, athletics, community cleanups, give backs, it's each town that we have planted a franchise in, we've just really planted roots in and been able to be part of a number of great things. One of our newest locations that we just opened up is actually in West Lynn, and right out of the gates, it's become kind of a social hub for a lot of young people. And similar, I believe, in Sandy, there's quite a few young people that outside of snowboarding and even the motocross track you have over here, there's just still room for this city to grow and have places for people to come and congregate. Dutch Bros has been a place where it's been actually little kids up to grandparents. There's something there for everybody. We you know, like I said, started in '92. We're a love all, serve all company. It's been my personal privilege to serve for the 22 years that I've been with Dutch Bros as a member of our culture committee. And a lot of what that ultimately is it's the relationship, it's the personnel development, it's the connection with the high school football team and supporting them and making sure that if they want to do an event for a homecoming game, that we've got a staff there and we're, you know, amping it up, making it fun. All the way down to bringing in people and teaching them trades, which, as we all know, that's something that realistically we need to bring back to America. There's a lot of young people that are gravitating towards college degrees, and ultimately, when they come out, there's not a ton of opportunity. And through Dutch Bros, we have a lot of training that allows people to continue in school, but to be working towards a trade. And in our new model, we have the operator, which allows you know, person to come in, work their way through a system, learning how to coach and lead, and like I said, be involved in their communities. And over time, they can become an operator, which is similar to a franchisee, where they operate a location in a town, and they get to be part of that city and invest in those people. And so, being in Sandy, and as I said, I live in Clackamas, well, Oregon City. I travel through here, I snowboard, our kids snowboard. I mean, Mountain View, the Widowmaker, I ride motocross, that's my track. This has been one of my personal dreams, is to get a Dutch Bros in Sandy. And a little bit too, because I also want to ease some concerns that will definitely come up. Just the history as far as my organization, when you look at locations such as the one that's proposed here, it's on a high traffic area, obviously. That's where we seek to do business. All of the systems that aren't seen in this proposal that we as a company operate in has to do with the runner program. I don't know if you guys go through Dutch Bros frequently or not, but our franchise specifically, we use runners, which are individuals out in line, similar to like a Chick-fil-A scenario, where you pull in line, they run out, they take their order within the property, but we run multiple runners, so the wait times in line are drastically reduced. The average wait time in our locations is 30 seconds per car. So when you look at stacking and you think 14 cars in queue, one thing I ask is that you run it through our times versus other brands that are similar in the industry. They don't utilize runners. So having a runner, having a facility that can handle a high volume of employees makes it like it's a Ferrari of coffee making. So, yeah, they gave me the invite to come here to send a representative, but personally, this is what I've been in since 17 years old. The coffee industry, the relationship business. So it is my desire to be here and request that you guys would, evaluate our proposal and know that if it, in turn, we're able to plant a Dutch Bros in Sandy, I look forward to a long-term connection and growing in this city. Yeah. And also, if anybody has any questions about it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Anything else on your presentation for your applicant? That's it?
If there's any questions, then we'll be.
Yeah, we'll be asking. All right. Okay, now we'll give opportunity for proponent and an opponent testimony. We'll give first opportunity if you are in favor of the application, the proposal that's before us tonight. We'll follow that with opponent testimony. If you're not in favor, then we do have a slot for if you just have a question of us or just a general neither for nor against comment that you'd like to make. So we'll begin with proponent testimony. If you are in favor of the proposal, we invite you to step up to the podium, give us your name and address for the record. And as I usually say, you gotta move quickly. Okay? We move on to opponent testimony. If you're not in favor, now is your opportunity.
Good evening, Ray Moore, All County Surveyors, P.O. Box 955, Sandy, for the record. Not necessarily against the proposed use. I'm here tonight on behalf of Dale, the owner of All County Surveyors and Planners. He owns 2 properties that are adjacent to the site, one directly north and one a little bit to the northeast. Tax lots 5401 and 5300. Like I said, I'm not really opposed to the use. I just want to make sure that the proposed improvements will not create an adverse impact to the properties owned by All County Surveyors. I also just want to make sure that all projects before you are being scrutinized at the same level. And I see some discrepancies with this application. With that said, I'd like to hand out an exhibit. Hey Dave, you might hand this out. And lately it's all been about the trees in Sandy, and I was a little surprised when I opened up the staff report and the applicant's report regarding trees. Specifically, section 1792.10, item 3. This section of the code applies to this site, first of all. The urban forestry does not apply, so we're just strictly under the section 1792. And I think everybody's pretty much familiar with it. 1792, section C, describes a significant tree being 25 inches in circumference, which that equates to a native tree. I mean, in my opinion, it's not really a significant tree, but the code calls it that. So with that said, I just did a quick Google Earth sketch today, popped in the site plan, over the aerial photo, looked out the window, took a guess at some of these trees, but the site does have trees. So with that said, staff specifically pointed out that on page 43 of the staff report, while PPI, or I guess partition plat 1, is currently absent of trees. I was just flabbergasted. It's like, really? Did they not see the one in 7-Eleven's driveway? I went and measured, it's like a 10 tree. So whether or not it needs to come out, I mean, I'm not an arborist, I don't pretend to be an arborist, but I am one that reads the code, and I think everybody should follow the code. So With that said, I think an arborist report needs to be conducted and a tree survey. Also with the land use application, there was not an existing features plan, one that shows the existing features in detail. That would pick up the tree. There was some contour maps, and it looked like maybe some aerial data was used, but also driving by today, there's a power line, overhead power line from the pole in front, Proctor, that goes kind of at an angle over to the mattress store overhead. I mean, it doesn't show up on here, and maybe nobody's talked about it yet. But those are the things that you'd pick up on an existing features plan. So like I said, I just wanted to point out the trees, and I think we need to make sure we're all following the code. Now I'd like to just flip real quick to the conditions of approval. Page 67 of the 315 pages. And I just take a glance quickly at the conditions. Condition 13 for example, I've done numerous of these site analyses. This condition is required of the applicant as a condition of approval to prove that the rooftop equipment cannot be seen. Over the years, we've done several exhibits at this level to prove that the design that's been submitted and or getting ready to be approved meets this requirement. So the concern I have is maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. What if it doesn't meet this requirement? Are they gonna then come back through land use review with a new building that has taller parapets? It's just something that typically is done at the land use planning stage. Condition number 14, the applicant shall install tree protection fencing located 5 feet outside of the drip line of all existing trees on site. So that brings us to the exhibit. If one were to do that, I'm not sure how you would build the store. You can see there's 3 clumps of trees, or, you know, on the site, and then there's numerous trees on the adjacent site, which would overlap into the drive-through. So I don't see how you could approve it with that condition. Condition approval number 24. A narrative discussing the vehicle movements for both sites, identify any on-site conflicts that could impact traffic on US 26. This kind of goes back to Mike Walker's report, or his review, and it shows up in Exhibit N. He goes on and on explaining that the pre-app, they've asked for this information, the applicant is going to submit it. It doesn't sound like it was ever really submitted. So I think that needs to be submitted at this stage as well, not as a condition of approval, because what if it doesn't work? You know, we've got to sort these things out now. Condition number 29, staff recommends the minor partition be approved. I didn't see that in the packet, but I saw it tonight, so it did look like they submitted a tentative plat. Typically, there's a little more detail, and there's a surveyor's signature on it. I didn't see that on this plat, but maybe it's not needed. Condition 29C, the applicant shall install a pedestrian access easement within the utility easement described in condition 29B of this report. This one is, I agree with it, the code requires the pedestrian connection to, you know, through this site. The problem I have is the site plan that's submitted doesn't show it. And so how is this pedestrian connection going to fit in with their drive-through? Is it gonna shift the drive-through, reduce stacking? Are they gonna go around the perimeter? You know, I don't know. I'm not sure how you could have a condition of approval that says, I'll just make this connection without a plan. So again, that plan needs to be submitted at this level. 29D, the applicant shall submit a tentative partition plan that includes the required detailed information. The plat shall include an 8-foot utility easement along both abutting right-of-ways, Proctor and Highway 26. The site plan clearly shows the canopy. There's some posts to support the canopy about 2.5, 3 feet off the property line. I'm curious how you're going to have an 8-foot public utility easement with these posts in it. Doesn't seem seems like if you're going to have an easement, it needs to be clear for underground utilities. So that one, that could trigger a redesign. Condition of approval number 30. This one is talking about the stormwater management plan shall be reviewed and approved in the stormwater. So that kind of brings up kind of the next level, one that Dale's mostly concerned about. The site is polluted, we know it is. The applicant's geotechnical engineer in Exhibit H, Rhino Geotechnical, page 243 of the report, knows it is too. And you know, it's not like anybody's trying to hide it. But with all that said, on page 251 of the report, this is of the geotech report, they list 5 test pits, B1 through B5. B2, B4, and B5, if you read the report, they get odor, and actually strong odor in B4 at a depth of about 7 feet below grade. They also hit a purged water layer at, or water level at about 7 feet. Why this is a concern is directly north of B4 is one of the tax lot Dale owns, a vacant lot, a little skinny lot between the existing home. The site plan shows a retaining wall there. It varies maybe 3.5 to 4.5 feet tall, supporting the coffee shop above the vacant property to the north. So the question that ran through my mind is, well, let's see, what does the geotech recommend for retaining walls? And he talks about it. He recommends installing drain rock behind the wall and a perf pipe, and this is on page 246 of the report. The perforated pipe collects the water and discharges it to an appropriate location away from the base of the wall. As an engineer, we always struggle with that. Well, and usually the code says daylight, so you daylight it behind the wall somewhere on the downhill side, if you can't get it into the storm system. So daylighting that would be densely on the vacant property to the north. There's not enough detail in the plans to show what those grades exactly are, and what elevation this pipe would be and where it would discharge. So I'm just thinking, if you have a piece of perforated pipe down 5.5 feet or so, and you have purged water at 7 that has strong odor, are we gonna have pollutants discharging on to the property to the north? And or if they figure out a way to tie it into the storm system, does it hit the city storm system? It becomes a city issue? I think that's a biggie, and I think it really needs to be evaluated in a little more detail. Then moving back to the conditions of approval. Condition of approval number 33, excuse me, they talk about additional information for the retaining wall for staff review. Condition number 34, site grading should not in any way impede, impound, or inundate adjacent properties. So the grading plan that I had and took a look at, they do have some contours that basically the northeast corner of the site slopes directly towards Dale's building, and there's no catch basin at the bottom of these contours to pick up any drainage. Everything up above in the paved surfaces is directed to these flow-through planters, and they're collected and managed, and there's a condition of approval to put a rubber liner under these things, which is fine. It's the area beyond that that would drain right to Dale's office. So that's an issue of concern. You know, we don't want water running off of the site on Dale. So I reviewed the stormwater report. There's a detailed analysis in there about stormwater. You can't read the information. It's the way they're printed is, it's just totally messed up. So I can't read it, I can't understand it, I can't read it. Also, there's no drainage map that shows how they justified, you know, where those areas were. They just referred to areas A, B, and C, but how does that actually get in the storm pipe if it slopes away from the storm system? So the storm report needs a little work at this level too, to show how they're gonna pick up that water and make sure it's managed. Dale was a little concerned. The landscape plan showed Hogan cedars just immediately south of the building. The landscape plan talks about trimming them for a hedge, but you know, if they don't, those things are 40 feet tall, 20 feet wide, and they're right up against the back of the building. What's the roots gonna do? What are the branches gonna do? What if they're not maintained? So he's got some concerns with the type of material there. I think that's kind of the highlights. And again, you know, I feel that this application wasn't scrutinized to the level it needs to be, and to the level that we've been scrutinized in the past in other applications. So I just want to make sure everybody's being treated fairly and equally. So if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
I just want to make sure, so the property that your office is in is here or here? Which one is Dale's?
To the
This
right,
one?
that's our office. This
Okay.
vacant lot is to the left of the house. So
This.
Yeah, keep going.
This?
That,
That strip.
right.
So Dale has this property, is that right?
Except for
the
the
house.
house.
Except for the house,
Yeah,
okay,
right.
thanks.
Is the piece of property to the right that got raised, that's kind of your parking lot now, is that a separate tax lot?
It's a separate tax.
And we own that too?
Yeah.
So technically you got three.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Other opponent testimony?
Good evening, Chair Crosby and Planning Commissioners. My name is Carrie Richter. I'm an attorney with the law firm Bateman Seidel. My office address is 888 Southwest 5th Avenue, Suite 1250, Portland, Oregon 97204. I'm here today representing Dale Holt. I submitted a letter raising some concerns that I had with the notice, and I believe that the city is going to continue the hearing. I hope that they will re-notice, mail out a new notice correcting a number of the errors that I pointed out there. I'm not going to restate those. I'm going to jump into the sort of fundamental flaws with this application. I think it's kind of interesting that tonight the staff report and the applicant never mentioned the approval criteria, and that's really what you're here to review in the first instance. And so I'm going to sort of be the bearer of bad tidings and jump into those relevant criteria and maybe hopefully not put us all to sleep. I'll try to move quickly. The first issue I want to talk about is the nature of the proposed use. The applicant states that the proposal is for an eating and drinking establishment that includes a drive-through use, which requires conditional use. It is not at all clear to me how a drive-up coffee kiosk is a eating and drinking establishment in the first instance when the public cannot go inside the building at all except for to go to the bathroom from the outside. This to me is fundamentally different than a McDonald's or a Burger King or a Baskin Robbins where the public is allowed inside and people eat inside. There is no inside for these people to drink coffee. This is a conditional use for a drive-through and nothing more. This is important because there's no permitted use component of this. This is, I think, fundamentally different than a drive-through that's attached to a Walgreens, where the drive-through is accessory to the Walgreens, which is the primary retail pharmacy use. So this, to me, in my mind, is nothing more than a conditional use permit. In order to grant a conditional use permit, an applicant has to establish that 6 conditional use criteria are satisfied. The first criteria is that the characteristics of the site are suitable for the proposed use considering the size, shape, location, topography, and natural features. The standard idea that right in this criterion that jumps out to me is location. The location is suitable for this use. This is a drive-through use. And the intent of the central business district says this district is not intended for intensive automobile uses. So I don't dispute that drive-throughs are a conditionally approved use, but we have to keep in mind that intensive automobile uses are discouraged because they're not intended for this zone. So it seems to me that if we're going to allow them, we have to be providing some mitigation for that heavily intensive automobile use. The application fails to explain any analysis of this criteria or any of the other criteria. If you look at the application itself, the applicant has merely provided a conclusion in response to this criteria. The application says the size, shape, location, topography, and natural features of the site are well suited for this project. Well, that's a conclusion. There's no analysis or explanation of the project that would lead one to believe that that criterion is satisfied. The second conditional use, or actually the third conditional use criteria is that the application is timely given the public facilities. The application does not include any explanation of how services, particularly appropriate stormwater removal, will be accomplished, and this is the issue that Mr. Moore raised. And whether and how it will flow and not flow onto neighboring properties. Another one of the criteria for conditional use is not alter the character of the surrounding area in a way that limits, precludes, or impairs the use of the surrounding properties for permitted uses. That's not just what uses are there today, but it's what uses could go there. And I think if you look at the staff report, what staff has done is said, well, there's a residence behind, and there's an office building, and there's a 7-Eleven, and there's a gas station, and there's another gas station. So, and there's primarily gas station-like uses, so this is appropriate for that location. But that's not the standard. It's permitted uses. It's whatever uses could go there. And the purpose of the C1 district is to include a mix of retail, personal service, office, and residential needs. That's what the permitted uses want to encourage there. So those are the kinds of uses that we have to consider when evaluating the character of the surrounding area. Again, the applicant didn't discuss this at all. There are criteria that talk about nuisance impacts and being compatible uses. There was no discussion in this application about headlights, an issue that was raised in testimony in the record, noise, odor from idling vehicles that would make the adjacent properties less desirable for office, retail, personal services, or residential needs. So this application isn't fully vetted and presented to you in a way that allows you to make a decision based on the facts presented. The application includes 3 variances. Staff talked about the 3, but didn't talk about any of the relevant criteria that would go into your analysis to decide whether or not to grant such a variance. The criteria that I think are most relevant to this application require a finding that the unique nature of the proposed development is such that 1, the intent and purpose of the proposed development is such that the intent and purpose of the regulations and of the provisions to be waived will not be violated. This goes back to the purpose statements for the provisions that are being varied. And I would suggest to you that in addition to sort of the purpose statement, the purpose provisions within the regulations themselves, the setback regulation or the parapet regulate or the gable roof variance or the frontage length, I would suggest that you, again, keep in mind this idea of discouraging vehicular uses. So that kind of overlays all of this in a request to vary things that even make the vehicular dependence of the site more intense. So the applicant's request to exceed the front setback in order to allow the drive-through to come through the front. The purpose, the purpose for this particular requirement of having a minimum 10-foot setback is to preserve the village scale and character. And the village scale and character is defined by the location and orientation of the development. Village scale is defined to mean development that is compatible and walkable. Building entrances are oriented to the street or the plaza. I don't see how this application does anything on that score. The applicant says they're adding a civic space. That civic space doesn't change the village scale of this development, which is a building that's at 18 feet back from the street. The building has no public entrance, so it's not welcoming to pedestrians in the first instance. And you're asking you're asking pedestrians to walk across the drive-through lane to get to this civic space. I would suggest that it may be that you can mitigate for these impacts and create a village drive-through, a village scale drive-through. But this is not even close. The second mandatory criteria requires a finding that the variance will not be, quote, materially detrimental to the public welfare and will not be materially injurious to other property. Staff does not even discuss this in their report, and the application doesn't either. And I think you've heard some testimony about that already. The roof design variance. The application doesn't include any sightline drawings, street side renderings, to determine whether or not the Cascadian style objectives will be satisfied by this alternative design. With regard to the undersized building frontage, again, the purpose of this requirement is to protect village scale, provide a continuous pedestrian network of buildings to make it a place that pedestrians want to walk. And it may be true that this is a very vehicular intense corner of the city. That doesn't mean we should perpetuate it further by making it even more vehicularly rooted. The intent statement of the design standards in 1790-00 says that the following elements are incompatible with Sandy's style. Subsection, and it says excessive surface parking lot paving. This property contains 21,780 square feet of paving. That's almost half the site, with an 834 square foot building. Says that drive-up facilities adjacent to the street that interrupt pedestrian circulation patterns are incompatible with Sandy's style. This drive-up facility directly interrupts pedestrian circulation standards. Adding the length of the proposed building, 41 feet, to the 16-foot civic space makes a total of 57 feet. The required building length is 82 feet, still 31 feet shy of providing the development improvement identified in the code for achieving a village commercial style streetscape. So again, you know, that you're trying to balance what is the mitigation appropriate for this drive-through facility. Certainly a 16-foot civic space is not going to do it, particularly when you have to walk across the drive-through to get there. I'm not going to go through all the approval criteria because I think Mr. Moore did a nice job of summarizing that, but I'm just going to point out that there are 42 approval criteria here, and approval criteria, there's no problem with adopting approval criteria to ensure compliance with the applicable approval criteria. But the problem is you can't defer to a later proceeding things that require discretion. Review of a stormwater plan requires discretion. What the landscaping plan requires is discretion. And if you're going to defer that to a staff decision, you have to provide opportunity for the public to comment and review that stormwater plan to make sure that the impacts are addressed. And so these conditions are highly problematic, and the applicant needs to either provide responses so that these conditions can be clear and objective, or we need to provide for a subsequent type 2 or type 3 review when these materials are submitted, so that my client has an opportunity to review them. In conclusion, there are just a number of defects in this narrative, in the evaluation of the criteria. There are materials that are missing, sightline and street level renderings. The land division analysis was not mentioned in the notice, so it wasn't clear to me that that was going to be part of the proceedings tonight. A parking analysis, an existing conditions plan, an evaluation of the impacts to existing and permitted uses based on qualified expert analysis. I urge you to not rush this and to delay this decision for at least 30 days for the application to be revised and submitted, and for staff and the public to have an opportunity to review it before you return at your continued hearing. I'd be happy to answer any questions, but I will conclude.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Additional opponent testimony.
My name is Brenda Mills. I live on 39667 Pleasant Street, the third house from the corner at Tenite, on the north side,
On the north side. okay.
across from the gravel pit, whatever you call it, the parking lot or something, right directly behind the 7-Eleven. Yes. I've lived there 25 years and there's been a lot of changes. It was a sleepy little town when I first bought my house there. I'm the only neighbor that's been there for that long, except for the funeral home, but it's not really a residence. And when I first heard about the design, that the traffic was going to be diverted out onto Pleasant Street, I thought, that is bad, because that street is really tough. You know, you get cars parked on both sides of the street, then you got a one-lane road, and you know, it's just a really narrow street, and Tenite is getting a lot of traffic all of a sudden. I don't know where it's coming from, but you practically have to have an invitation to get on Pleasant Street to get to the light, to go to the post office or whatever, you know. It's just really getting tough. And then I came last week to look at the plans with, I can't remember your name.
James.
And he explained to me that they had the wraparound parking lot, you know, and I thought, well, you know, supposedly they get a lot of traffic, so I thought, well, they probably have enough room to divert traffic around the building and then exit. But then I got to thinking, you know, when ski season happens or a 3-day holiday, everybody's coming home from Portland, that traffic backs up at that light, at least to Lansing, if not to Calamity Janes. And you get that many people trying to enter and exit that spot that close to the light, it's just gonna cause more problems. There's a few people that realize that Pleasant Street goes almost all the way across parallel the highway. And if the traffic gets bad enough, there's gonna be more traffic diverting on Pleasant Street trying to avoid the backup at the light, because some people get stuck in the intersection when the light changes and the traffic is stopped at 211. And I just think that it's just not gonna work. It's just gonna be more cars going down Pleasant Street, and like Sunday afternoon or whatever, and not gonna be able to get on the road safely. It's just, people just storm down there when they get mad, when they get in the backup and stuff, they just fly down the road. That's my concern.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Additional opponent? Okay, anybody with just a comment to the planning commission, or observation or question? Okay, we'll move on to,
Can I say one more thing?
oh,
For the record.
you gotta jump?
Yeah, sorry, Ray Moore, All County Surveyors and Planners. I forgot to mention one thing, I turned my notepad. There was one more thing. The code requires utilities to and through all developments. The current plan shows storm sewer at their northwest corner and then down going to the west behind the existing storm system. When you improve a frontage, there is a condition of approval that they put a sidewalk on Pleasant Street. But there's a condition of approval to run utilities to and through. Water's there, sanitary sewer is there, but storm is not there. Storm needs to be extended to their northeast corner to meet the code. Thank you.
Okay, now staff recap.
Yeah, so James and I will just kind of both chime in here. I think David was taking a lot of notes too, so I'm guessing he might chime in as well. And please feel free to whenever you would like. So there's a lot of stuff here. You know, one thing I want to point out right off the bat that Ms. Richter pointed out around eating and drinking establishments. We don't define those in our definition section within the development code. I couldn't find it. I don't know of any case that we've ever interpreted that you have to be able to walk into the unit. If that was the case, I don't think any of our existing food carts would be compliant. The coffee kiosk down by the AM/PM that was approved in the last 7 or 8 years, that would not be able to be there under the permitted use section. So I'm a little confused where that's coming from. I also was just looking at the Cambridge Dictionary and some other things online, because that's what we refer to when it's not spelled out on our development code. And I don't see any mention of that, an eating and drinking establishment, you'd have to enter into the building for it to be considered like a restaurant. So I just want to point that out. I don't know where that was coming from, but that's the first time I've even ever heard that argument in all 3 of the jurisdictions I've worked in. So it kind of hit me as kind of an odd statement. I do agree with Ray's last comment there, the utilities to and through the site. So if stormwater is not defined on the utilities plan, I think that should actually go to the furthest extent of the site when we're doing the right-of-way improvements. So I do agree with that. I just wanted to throw that out there since you had just mentioned that. There's quite a few comments that were made. I think some of these were good catches by Ray, and a few of those we'll probably have to evaluate in further detail before really giving comments right now, since we just heard them. The concerns over the contaminants kind of struck me as a little bit odd. They have been working with DEQ. We know they've been working with DEQ. We don't have anybody on staff, and I don't assume any of you up there on the dais tonight can interpret if they're doing their Phase 1 and Phase 2 environmental assessments correctly. We are relying heavily on DEQ for this process, and to sort all this out. We didn't really want to hold up the land use process based on what they'll have to do with DEQ. I think that would all have to be confirmed and acknowledged prior to doing any grading on the site. So we just wouldn't issue a grading permit until that's all figured out. But I don't think that you necessarily have to hold up the whole land use process just because that's not all figured out at this point. If there's something that comes out of that would contaminate somebody else's site, I'm pretty sure, like the L site to the north, DEQ would be having that conversation with the applicant. But again, the city doesn't have any expertise to be able to evaluate that. The discretionary, so one thing that Ms. Richter brought up that I think David would have to go into more detail about, but we condition in the 8 years I've worked here, in all the 3 cities I've worked in, is that there's always going to be a certain number of conditions that are made within the recommended staff report by staff that have to do with, like, work with staff to update the landscape plan, and work with staff to finalize different elevations and stuff like that. I'm also a little bit puzzled by her bringing that or mentioning that, because state law does require that if an applicant was to tell us this is all we're submitting, we still have to process the land use application. So if they didn't want to submit all of that analysis, that could be part of the reason for denying it, but we'd still have to analyze it. So to me, it's not a big deal at all that it's before you tonight and we don't have everything exactly figured out. As you all know, this is pretty typical of land use decisions. Not everything's figured out before it comes to a hearing. So I was a little bit confused on that. The land division, I do want to point out, was mentioned in the notice. It was on the first page of the notice. It was like the second paragraph, I believe. And we can, we'll clarify in the notice on the next one. I think what Ms. Richter is talking about is on page 3, the comment sheet. Chapter 17-100 was not spelled out, but if you read the notice, it says that there's a land use partition or land partition, and James even put, I think, even the parcel sizes and everything in there. So it's all the relevant information's in there. It's just, I guess, the chapter section wasn't copied over. I mean, we can get into a real long use or a real long discussion on all of these intention sections and all of that. I think once you guys decide you want to talk about that, James might want to go into that a little bit right now, but there was so much brought up about, heavy drive-through use, is it timely, uses around site, noise, odor, headlights, setback of 10 feet, discourages vehicular uses in the intent section. I mean, it went on and on with their testimony. So we can talk about that more in a little bit. I just didn't know what you guys even wanted our interpretation or assistance on there. Was there anything you wanted to add to
Well,
that,
to
James?
piggyback off that, point, and as well as the point that staff didn't clarify specific criteria today in their presentation. My presentation to you today is, and has it always been, has been to kind of give you a flyby. You guys have been provided this information ahead of time. I definitely know from an email I received regarding a few typos that you guys look at these thoroughly. So I don't want to spend an hour of your guys' time reiterating whatever you've already read. We did talk a little, or it was spoken about 1790C, I believe, for, the intent. What we have to look at, staff, is while we always look at the intent of the zone districts, we also have to look at the criteria for approval. That specific section did say you may deny. However, looking at the intent, yes, it's not for automobile uses. However, they've done, in my professional opinion and personal opinion, in that they have mitigated a lot of different things, so it's not as dependent as an auto user. They have provided civic space, which we used in the calculation and analysis for the parking. While we didn't receive that information initially within the application, through communication, we were able to get that information. As well as the application is what we receive. If we've received a completed narrative, what we get is what we receive. I think myself and my colleagues have done a really great job at looking at that, looking at the intent, looking at the approval criteria, looking at what our council has really wanted to see within the district, also considering the fact that it's been vacant for so long, and kind of seeing what those best uses are. As described, there were 3 pre-application meetings. We did have testimony that one of the original ones was to have an exit on Pleasant Street. We realized that's not the goal, the look, the feel that we want to achieve, so we worked with the applicant to remediate that by having a potential partition and having everything diverted just onto Proctor. So really, it puts you guys in a unique, fun spot because you guys have a lot to consider. I even considered a lot with some of the stuff that was brought up, and there were great points. Sometimes we get very involved with our projects, and we miss a couple. Understandable. I think this proposal is pretty good with the intent, as well as I don't think the intent should be always, it should definitely be followed and upfront, but then we also have to look at that criteria, as well as does the criteria match and does the intent, is it achieved through the proposal? So.
Yeah, a couple other things I'll add. The overhead wire that was mentioned by Ray, that's a good catch. We actually did catch that in a couple of our pre-apps, and it's mentioned in the notes, so we would just make sure that that's updated on here. So staff had caught that before. I don't know why we didn't put it in this staff report, but we can add it to this staff report when you guys see it again. The other one that I did want to, or was I just reading that? Oh, right. So I get the point about not walking across the drive-through lane. And I think I think the applicant at least sent us 3 or 4 different iterations of trying not to do that. And I believe there was even a applicant or two before the current owner of the property, this gentleman that came in several times outside of pre-apps even and submitted different layout schemes to us with trying not to have that work, or trying not to have a walk through the drive lane. And basically the problem with that was that they either, whenever they set it up that way, it either blocked the parking area, so you'd have a drive-through kind of blocking the whole parking lot and you wouldn't be able to get cars through, or you'd only be able to stack like 3 or 4 cars, which if you've been to a Dutch Brothers, that's never going to work. They have a lot more vehicles in there than that. And then, we kind of started thinking about, would it be that bad to have the drive-through aisle with a pedestrian easement across it, or a pedestrian walkway? And then if you look around town and you think about how it's already set up in town, we have, I know of at least 2 buildings, being Panda Express and the Starbucks, that were both approved since Sandy Style came into play. Granted, they're not in the downtown, but this code was in effect. We allowed that. Would there have been a better layout option? Maybe, but I don't think it's ever been a big detriment to having people cross there just because there's a drive-through lane. If you look at the McDonald's, the KFC, pretty much most of the drive-throughs, the Dairy Queen, the Taco Time, but I mean, most of the drive-throughs in our town do have a pedestrian way crossing the drive-through. And would I rather not have that be the case? Sure. And that's why we kept asking the applicant, design this a different way. give us something else. But really, what it came down to is to maximize the site potential, have the biggest stacking distance, not interfere with the parking turnaround area and the, the parking lot. It kept coming back to that the drive aisle had to be located with a pedestrian walkway through it. And I think that's why you've seen it at the Panda. I think that's why you've seen it at the Starbucks, because I think they look at a lot of site options, and that drive-through use is very limiting in how you lay out a site, unless you just have like tons of acreage.
Another example would be like the McDonald's. They're required to have connection to the highway, and they have a striped pedestrian pathway. This pathway through the drive aisle will be raised, so it'll have a increase, a flat, and decrease, as well as will be paved a little bit differently. That will actually be concrete, while the actual queuing aisle will be paved. So it will have a visual difference as well as even a topography difference with having to go up and then down that. I did speak recently with the applicant regarding the connection. We did talk about the easement on the west side of the new parcel being potentially created to the north and how that would connect. I did believe Ray brought that up. I did speak to them that we would require that connection in some capacity, and then that they might consider putting in another raised pedestrian access to get to that northwest corner of the property to connect. He did explain to me that there had been an idea of having a complete pathway along the entire west of the property, but due to topography, that might not be possible. I told him to kind of consider the options, and kind of, as you update these plans to submit to us, show construction plans on how you would make that connection or different alternatives.
Yeah, and the only other two things I want to point out, I'm just going through all my notes here. So first, I'd like to point out by Ms. Richter, it was mentioned about odor and noise, and I think that was evaluated on page 14 of the staff report. I don't know what page that is on the total packet. I just have the staff report in front of me. So, I don't know, you can always do more evaluation, I guess, but I don't think, from living here and walking around downtown with semis going downhill on Proctor and putting their Jake brakes on, I don't think that a bunch of single-use vehicles within a drive-through are going to create more noise than that. I also don't just fully understand how it's going to create any more noise than any other use that would be at the site, because any use at the site is probably going to have vehicles coming to it. I don't know if there's some concerns by Ms. Richter that the vehicles would be idling and therefore creating more noise. I really don't know what the comment was really in relation to. I think we did evaluate it. I don't know if we evaluated to the extent that some people would like, but it was evaluated. And then the last thing I do want to bring up is this tree sketch and the tree evaluation that Ray brought up. I think he's right in the extent that this was maybe missed. We did have a long discussion about this with that code interpretation. We did talk about that. Last time it was Ray arguing against trees.
Yeah,
this time it's for him, so it's kind of funny. But yeah, I think he is correct in that when we made the discussion last time, the intent section does say that all trees, over a certain diameter should be maintained to the maximum extent possible. And I think that's what he's mainly referring to here. This site's under an acre, so the tree retention standards in 102 would not apply. But we could have them look at this in more detail prior to coming before you again tonight. A lot of these trees are going to be removed because the maximum extent possible, that a lot of these trees are either in paved surfaces, proposed paved surfaces, or so close that we wouldn't even want to see them be retained because they would just be damaged due to compaction and digging and everything else. I see maybe one tree on the site, just from looking at his sketch here, that looks like it has potential capacity to be saved, but again, that would have to be evaluated by an arborist. All those trees along Pleasant Street would have to be removed for a sidewalk. All the trees within the internal site would have to be removed. They're going to be grading and compacting the site. This is the same argument that was presented on behalf, of Jacoby Heights, that they had to grade and compact the site. So I think a lot of these trees are going. There might be one tree that I'm seeing that might be able to stay. But then it becomes an issue on this type of site. that tree is going to be right in the middle of that next developable lot. And so when they come in with their design review for, say, a building in the future, it's going to be under an acre, so they'll just say, here's my proposal. I couldn't save it. I tried to the greatest extent possible, and now I got to remove it. So we could go through the exercise. I do believe Ray is correct that we probably should have had them go through the exercise. I think what that will yield most likely is at the most one tree being retained. But I don't know. I mean, that's up to you guys if you want to run them through that exercise or not.
Well, I'd be up to you folks. I mean, you don't spend a lot of time on it, but for the, to be complete, I'd cover it. I mean, it's a
Yeah, I mean,
paragraph.
I think it would be good to
paragraph
evaluate
what
it.
you said.
Yeah, I think it would be good to evaluate it. I do think the end result's going to be most of these trees have to go, but that's fine. I mean, that's part of the process. So I would recommend probably evaluating it. And I do believe Ray is correct that it probably should have been. So it's probably just something we missed. Do you have anything else, James, for now? Or?
So you guys all done?
I think we are for now.
All right.
I think, I'd like to say just one quick thing, because it's just, there was something you folks did. I mean, I picked up on it pretty quick, but others may not have. In presentation style, you chose to basically summarize the project and then, go to the recommendations in the end. Last time we were here, Emily she took 20 minutes and she's reading the whole staff report.
Mm-hmm.
So some people may have thought that that's what they expected. So what I heard you say, and what I think is fine, is it's written, it's right here. So they evaluated, Ms. Richter indicated that she didn't hear staff, address the conditions for the conditional use permit or the variances. They didn't verbally correct by design, by presentation style. They're here. So I always want to say staff addressed them. You can disagree with them. The applicant didn't, which might be a thought. If they want these things, they have to present their case too. But, it's written material, so
Yeah.
I think staff
We
did
read
their
it.
job. In fact, I thank you for not repeating it.
Yeah, me
That way we can get out of here before 10 o'clock.
Yeah,
And you
there-
say the same thing we've already read.
And there's definitely a happy medium between it, and James and Emily present slightly different. That's just how they choose to present.
Yeah,
I'm not
that's
going to
it.
control
But I
that.
just want to point out that I think
I'm not
what you did was
micromanaging to that
fine.
level, yeah.
It may not have
No.
been obvious initially
Yeah.
to some folks.
But for the people in the audience, to
Yeah.
know, we did get it, and we spend a lot of time reading before we come to the commission.
Yeah, so
Okay.
Thank you.
David?
So I'm not going to belabor much more. The only thing I would say, two things, I guess. One is that the intent during during the continuance, when we figure out that date, staff will be issuing another notice. So just doing that to address some of the issues that were raised, have that belt and suspenders approach to it. No reason not to do it, especially if there's going to be a continuance. The only other issue I would say, and this is really kind of getting down into the weeds here, so I'm literally not going to spend a lot of time on this. We'll look at it more closely. Carrie's right in the sense that you can't have a condition that defers compliance with the standard unless you allow for a process along with that condition. So you can't just say, well, it's not really clear that the stormwater criteria are met, but we're just going to have a condition that'll say, demonstrate compliance with that as a condition of approval. If you're going to do that, because you've never found at any point that the condition, that the criteria are either complied with or it's feasible to comply with them, then she's right. You've got to have something, if you're going to have some condition that says comply with them on the back end, there's got to be a process for that. That's different, though, than if the evidence in the record and the findings are written in a way that the evidence supports, that says, well, based on what we see here, we think it's feasible for the applicant to comply with this relevant criteria. But there's going to be some work that's going to have to be done, whether it's the landscaping plan or the stormwater plan, of a technical nature. LUBA's consistently held that making that first finding that you've either got compliance or that it's feasible to comply, you can have those types of conditions and not have a new process associated with that. So we'll take a look at some of the proposed conditions. Maybe there's some tightening that can be done there, some clarifying. Maybe with respect to the findings themselves and the relevant criteria, there's probably some additional tightening that we can do. We're going to have some time to do that, and maybe the applicant can give some assistance with that as well. So, but that's kind of where I wanted to go with it.
Did you want to bring up the 120-day clock? Since we haven't actually asked the applicant that yet.
Oh, Sure. So, I mean, the 120-day issue, you've got until July 12th to process this application. So well, the city has to have a final decision by July 12th. There's been 2 requests from participants tonight to have the continuance, so you have to do that. That time will run from the 120-day clock unless the applicant were to consent to a 30-day extension during that time period. That's up to the applicant. As we've talked about before, we can't compel that. So that would be nice to have that, so there's not, the feeling of the back against the wall, but you also, it's pretty early in the process, to be honest, so.
Do you have a proposed date? Well, we have to continue to a date certain, don't we?
Right. When we get
I
to
mean,
that
if we're
point.
renoticing, does it have to be updates or at the meeting?
Well, I would say that we pick a date that it technically wouldn't, but my suggestion would be to pick a date tonight and renotice to that date.
Okay, that's all I was wondering. You have to
I
pick
could
something
think
tonight.
about that during the meeting.
Well, we're gonna have to continue it, though, during this hearing, so we gotta.
Right,
Mhm.
yeah, we'll have to.
Okay.
Yeah, I know, I
we'll
just
have
had
a
to-
Just need to
discussion.
check our schedule.
Sure.
See what's on.
Anything else on recap?
I don't think so.
Okay,
For the moment.
opportunity for applicant rebuttal.
I'll address a few points I brought up from various studies throughout the last hour or so. On the traffic movements that Mike Walker requested, we talked a lot with Mike. On that particular request, you'll see 7-Eleven's parking is currently actually in the access easement. So that will no longer be able to be a parking spot. So when he requested a vehicular analysis from engineers of a car backing out of the westernmost spot, we really need to wait until we can determine where 7-Eleven's westernmost spot would be, and we can provide that analysis. So that was just slight clarity on what exactly is being requested, given the kind of changing nature of the westernmost spot. But we ran several analyses in the process of getting the ODOT access permit, and we're fairly confident on the safety of the car movement throughout the site. With regards to the overhead electric, we've already talked to PG. We've had several site visits with PG. We've identified the plan as having power in the building. The PG project manager will the overhead electric to the mattress work site. It is not intersecting with our building footprint at all, so good news. Many of the engineering items we were under the impression that would be provided at time of construction drawing. We've shown some of the utility plans. We do have a full topo also survey on the site, and we share that with State of Sandy. We're happy to share that if it would be helpful to the commission. Does anyone have any questions?
Okay, not at this point. Okay, we have a choice of either doing some discussion, all the discussion, as much as we want tonight, or just continue it and wait for additional, there'll be a new staff report, I assume, or at least an addendum with the continuation.
I think a new staff report.
New staff report, okay.
So one thing I do want to keep in mind for all you guys is we do have a lot of agenda items coming up, and we're already having an additional meeting in June. So I think if you could do some discussion and give some preferences and even chime in on what you'd like to see the additional staff report evaluate. And I mean, I think the more you could do tonight would lessen the burden with when this is going to have to go for the continuance.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to hold this here all night either, but I think having some discussion would be pretty vital to give staff some feedback, and also maybe the applicant and, I mean, the opposing parties can, listen in, because they'll probably want to talk again at the next hearing, I'm assuming. So that'd be my recommendation.
Yeah. Okay. now I give my little speech about how we run things here. To those of you maybe new to public hearings, we can close it now so that we begin our discussion.
Actually, Jerry, tonight you can't, because
That's right.
you got the
We
request.
gotta
So
keep
this is all gonna be
It's
open,
free all.
yeah.
Okay. Well, in the words of Gilda Radner, never mind.
But we've taken testimony at this point,
Yes,
right?
we've taken testimony.
Oh, yeah, and you're absolutely, I think Kelly's right in terms of there's probably some wisdom in just maybe at least beginning the discussion, giving some direction. But, where you were gonna go wouldn't
I
be
don't
it
need
until
to.
your next one,
Yep.
so.
That's good.
Sure, nope, go ahead. I'm just-
This site's been vacant since, in the 80s?
89.
89? Okay. I just wanted to make sure I had the right date.
Yeah, we've had a lot of proposals, but not many people have ever went to pre-app. And then maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, a gentleman bought it. He brought in numerous pre-apps, and actually not even that many pre-apps, just a lot of like, hey, can I talk to you guys? And brought in like very rough sketches, and then he sold it. And then so there's been more pre-apps since then. So there's been some interest in the site, but it's all occurred in the last few years.
Yeah.
Before that, I don't think there's been much that I know of, at least.
Well, yeah, I know when I was director of the chamber, which was from 2007 to 2013, so 6 years I was the director of the chamber. And we had a lot of people who were interested in that lot, but most people couldn't afford to do what needed to be done. You know, our city's growing, and we need some people to come in on a lot like that has a lot of problems. So being able to have somebody who's got the ability to develop a lot that's, I don't know, is now the time to talk. But
Probably not at that
Okay.
level, but.
Was there concern the hazmat part versus anything else?
No, it was mostly the hazmat, which I know a lot of work's been done on it, but like somebody else said, I think we have to defer to ODOT and DEQ and all the people who that's their business to do. That's not our business to do.
Kelly and James, would it be helpful if we kind of just maybe spend our first little bit of discussion addressing the variances as they have been presented and give you any feedback on that?
I think so, yeah. Do you
Okay.
think so, Jim?
As well as the conditional use, of course.
Yeah, I mean, the rubber
Yeah.
meets the road. And this is
Well, and
for the applicant. I want the applicant to hear this. But the rubber meets the road.
Seems like-
They're looking for, this could be a permitted use, when a conditional permitted use to drive through, which is a hot topic in Sandy and C1. If you don't know that, you better know it now. And the second one is, there's some variances being asked for. So you don't do anything, you gotta address the variances. You gotta convince us that we gotta grant the variance. I mean, you have to be your own advocate, is my point. So to not address those, staff's addressed them, but, that's one of the.
The one, going through the variance on variance A, with the setback, et cetera, I'm gonna talk for about 2 minutes, I think, just to try to tie it all together,
All right, good.
is I'm trying to figure out, I understand trying to maximize the queue length, but I think it's on taken too far. I don't understand why they couldn't come in on the 7-Eleven end, go back and then come out at a separate exit. That way the building could come forward. You could go from the sidewalk and step directly onto the civic area without crossing any traffic. The traffic would all go
Yeah.
behind. It doesn't give you, you could also stretch out the front of the building to decrease that 50% variance as well. So I think it's all queue length related. And then to tie it back together, reading through people's things myself, C1 is, we're trying to encourage walkability, et cetera. So I think it'd be a great addition to have the Dutch Brothers there, but to have the use of the site that we can put something on that actually work. I mean, it was an office building all the time, having those fumes come up, I think there could be some detriment there. I'm not sure if that would actually work or not. But by having a separate entrance and exit, again, the building pulls forward. I had questions, I think, Ray brought up about the 8-foot easement with the canopy over the front. I mean, all those things would seem like they would be really minimized by that. So I'm just kind of wrapping up here. I wonder why that wasn't looked at. I'm sure it was.
It was.
Okay, but I think it probably was queue length again, of trying to get the cars all stacked in there, or maybe it was something else. But if it's queue length, then I think they go back, can they get the required number? They wouldn't have as many, but by bringing the building forward, we'd be more in line of maintaining and, adhering to the standards that we have in place. So, does that make some sense?
I actually thought the exact same thing, like if, I mean, they'd lose some of the queue, but if you've got parking, I mean.
Oh, then one other thing,
People can park if they can't be in the queue.
the entrance and exit, it just seems like which Don's always malfunction junction. There's just a lot happening with that one entrance at 7-Eleven, the entrance, the exit, and the pedestrian crossover. So anyway, and I'm sure you guys are way smarter looking at it than me, but that was trying to figure out why that isn't being presented to us tonight.
Well, I think, a couple quick thoughts. The staff was given a proposal, and their job is to evaluate that proposal, not do all the staff work for the applicant. That's why I kind of looked at the applicant and said, if you want the variance, then you got to convince us that this is the only way it's going to work. In other words, why can't you, show us a plan on if you were to put the building next to the street, why it wouldn't work. You follow me? I mean, I want to pick on one, but we had Walgreens, and there's a tendency when you have a chain to take your cookie cutter store and come in and plop it down and say, here you go. Well, that might work, but it might not work. Okay, you got to look at what city you're in, you got to look at what the code is and what it says. So that's, it's up to the applicant to show us why they want the variance, is my point. And part of that discussion is why this won't work, that won't work, this won't work, that won't work. Because it isn't if you do something at times, it's simply how you do it. I did have one of the quick comments. One of them is it's important that people that live on Pleasant understand that that side of Pleasant South, the south side of Pleasant is commercial.
North side is too.
And that's why
Pleasant is
all county
commercial.
surveyors are there.
No, but the north side's commercial too.
Right,
Just to- yeah.
so I know, we had a testimony from a young lady here who lived there 25 years, that's fine, but the point is that you could go to this lot that's being subdivided out and plunk down a business right there on Pleasant, and you start looking across going, wait a minute, this is a residential neighborhood. You now live in C1. Okay, so that's just, it's important to kind of be aware of that. And I think on the pedestrian crossing, on that can be mitigated. I think about, look at all the congestion that goes when you walk into Safeway or Fred Meyer. How many vehicles are going by your grocery store and you're going from the parking lot? So this is minor compared to what we navigate every day when we go to Fred Meyer. Look left and look right. And there's way more traffic there than you'd have in this. So, there's a way to mitigate that. But the point is that you have to show that is the way to do it, and by showing us alternatives that you've looked at, and just not come in and say, here's what we want to do, please approve it. As you can see, we have some people that are asking questions. And so I would say a lot of the stuff that I would say you would look and address is would look at what the testimony is. We want to simply address those concerns that need to be addressed, as opposed to opinion. Because no matter what you do, somebody can still have a different opinion.
So can we address the thing Ron brought up? I think you were
Yeah.
bringing up too, Don.
Regarding the access to the site, ODOT will not approve a second entrance on the site. Right now, it currently has that existing ingress-egress. The site, the subject property itself has an access easement with the 7-Eleven for ingress-egress.
Got it.
There were proposals, including a second one. ODOT was present for those and explained that they wouldn't be able to approve another one. Now, regarding the 8-foot utility easement that Ray did bring up, that's unique to me. I don't know why I hadn't thought about the fact that our code requires an 8-foot utility easement along any frontage. However, this zone district requires a maximum of 10 feet setback. So it seems like those two are in conflict with each other. So I kind of want to discuss that with our Public Works Director and kind of figure out what the intent of that utility and how that kind of doesn't really fit with the intent of that maximum 10-foot.
Wasn't the utility easement under the sidewalk?
No, it would be on the actual property itself.
Because you look at, I mean, you're coming along on 8 feet on their property and you're running the side of the mattress store.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
the utility's got to be going under the sidewalk. I mean,
Yeah.
that's where the
Well,
easement is
yeah.
in reality, if you're in a commercial zero lot line place. I mean, you're in a residential development, different game, right? But it seems to me like the utility easement on the highway side would be right on the sidewalk.
It is a good point. I mean, yeah, we have a 0 setback. So
Zero
how
setback,
do you get the
so-
8 foot PUE? Yeah.
How you gonna
Yeah,
pull that one
It doesn't
off?
make any sense.
So now you want these folks to put you want to put their Dutch Brothers right there,
On top of.
so that they have the drive-through on the other side? Well, now how are you gonna put the 8-foot easement when you just,
Yeah.
they've already said, Ray's already said, your posts appear to be inside the 8-foot easement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, the next door neighbor building, like you just explained,
Yeah,
is
so,
technically,
I mean,
it
those
was
are kind
probably
of-
platted before that was a requirement.
I mean, those kind of
However,
things we need to sort out because they become appealable points.
yeah. Codes aren't always the best sometimes.
I mean, there probably should be an exception in the code that says when you partition or subdivide a commercial property in the downtown, you don't have to put an 8-foot PUE. Right? Because you can put a building right up to the lot line, so.
Clarify to me one thing, they originally had a plan to go ahead and exit out on a Pleasant?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was looked at, the second driveway access onto the highway, like James pointed out, that was like a non-starter for ODOT. They weren't keen on that at all.
Originally, it wasn't gonna be subdivided, it was gonna be one lot with the
Right.
Dutch Brothers as well as a separate commercial building on the
On the top.
on the part fronting Pleasant Street, so it had a continuous through, but it wasn't, the queue lane wasn't adding up right, and
Mhm.
vehicular circulation wasn't great. But I guess they just chose to go this path, subdividing and.
Well, I can see kind of why they did all this, the queuing, number one, because one thing that went through my mind is I've done this more than once. I've gone down Hogan Road, essentially going to Troutdale, just past Albertsons, and there's the Dutch Brothers, you know where it is probably. And how many times I've seen that cars backed out onto Division. And they have a large queue in lot there. I couldn't believe it. I mean, how big the queue was, and they still were backed out on the road. So that was one of my concerns. But, given the amount that's here, but I think the comment that the applicant made about the process they use to speed through the queue needs to be part of their presentation and part of any transit, well, any traffic engineer's thing, as opposed to what's in the standard book. They'll have to go to the standard book and pull it out and use coefficients.
I thought this queue design was actually really good because of that many cars, because of that location, and then there's another one down by the Red Lobster in Gresham, in the middle of the parking lot, but that would go all the way across the parking lot in both directions. So this, I think, is pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I actually commented to them that keep increasing the queue length, because they met it right away. I mean, all you had to do is have 3 vehicles, fair code. But I've been to Dutch Brothers, I've been to the one by the airport, that one that you're talking, and 3 vehicles.
Yeah.
We'd have it stacked down the highway, and
Yeah.
so it was like, there's no way that's ever gonna work with the Dutch Brothers, so. Or really any drive-through,
Any
3
drive-through.
vehicles.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm not crazy about the idea of drive-through downtown, but given where it's located and the 7-Eleven and the 2 gas stations and everything, I talk to a lot of potential businesses, and your basic retail store doesn't want to be there. I mean, this gives us like a middle ground, like it kind of goes with those things, but not another one of those, just like, I don't know, that it seems like it helps kind of knit together that end of town.
Yeah, but the other key thing you guys keep in mind, 'cause we haven't dealt with too many of these quite recently. A drive-through is a permitted use in C1. It's just a conditional permitted use.
Right.
It's not outright.
No,
What does that mean? that means, yeah, that we could do it, but we want input on how it's done. That's what conditional means, is that it's not you're for it or against it, it's just we want to,
Right.
it's how you do
Meet
it.
the criteria.
Yeah, right. If they walked in here and said, okay, we're gonna have a drive-through and we're gonna meet your code and have 3 vehicles, we'd all probably kind of see cars on the highway and we'd say, nah. Remind you of when the bank used to be, when Bank of America used to be and where it was.
Yeah.
And they had it took 2.5 vehicles to go through their drive-through and you had a rear end parked out on 26 going that way. I mean, absolutely perfect example of a poorly designed drive-through and
What are thoughts on the partition for staff?
Oh, you mean to divide off the top lot? That seems like,
sounds like money for surveyors
yeah,
to me.
sounds like a good
That's
idea.
what they want to do.
Well, if our.
It's an interesting
ultimate- if our
property line that's
ultimate-
there.
Yeah, if our ultimate goal is to have more businesses on Pleasant, that seems like a smart
Mhm.
thing to do.
Well, I had we haven't talked about the flat roof, but I had a thought kind of you Don about, encouraging the applicant to show us how it can't be done. I'm reminded of Panda Express.
Well, that's,
And what
that,
they, as an example of a creativity of using a flat roof with a pitch.
well, nobody is, our assumption is that an eating restaurant has air conditioners, they have stuff on the roof, right? And we have some interesting designs on that in Sandy and C1. Just look at the Panda Express. And that's a flat roof. What they did was, they put up some 2x6s to kind of give you a feeling, okay? And then you look at what's now the Starbucks, it used to be the Jack in the Box. It looks great from the front, go a third of the way back, comes down, it's flat, right? So if you're gonna have an eating establishment, I don't care where it is, you're gonna have a flat roof, right, Ron? You're gonna have to put, so, I mean, to me, it's an assumption. If you say you're gonna allow eating and drinking establishments in C1, then you're gonna have some version of a flat roof. Forget the 50 feet, the 20 feet. It's just a practical need for the business. It's just how you go about doing it. So, but I didn't hear anybody say that there's gonna be anything on the roof yet.
Well, the other one too is from the renderings that were given out, I would be hard pressed to have somebody say that it is really a flat roof. With
Yeah.
the overhang, the civic space, it looks like it's a pitched roof.
Yeah, it does.
Well,
Okay.
the thing coming out, what you
Yeah.
see from the street, which is what you're concerned about, not what you see from the air.
So I think, visually, I think it's been met
Dishes, yeah,
on
me
it.
too.
So it's a clever interpretation.
I think that's what their intention was,
Yeah,
too.
I think it's great.
Yeah, but what I didn't hear is why they need to do it. And it may just be one sentence. But I'm assuming that's why it's there, but the sin of assumption, we can't assume that, so they need to write down. That's where I think the applicant can help justify why the special variance should be granted. They have to be their own advocate.
We want to hide all the mechanicals.
Yeah,
Right, that's
the line of sight, right?
I'm looking over it, and that's what needs to happen. Going back to the drive-through, and now that you clarified the ODOT piece that's there, I'm no traffic engineer, we may have one or two in here, okay? I'm just going through on that, the ingress and egress with 7-Eleven. It just looks like, again, it's such a tight swing for a pickup, more or less, coming out and making that sharp turn with people coming in and out on it. I saw some renderings with the,
350 right
yeah.
there.
We've never seen that.
We
I mean,
told
they
them that
did
shouldn't use that
analysis
as one of
with
their
the loading
typical
bands,
vehicles.
they did analysis with the cars, with the 350s. I mean, to me, that's technical. And, if a traffic engineer says that can make it, so be it.
We did actually tell them to use that specific design
Yeah.
vehicle for that site, so.
It is sandy.
And we
Yeah.
do have a decent number of dual-cab, this is Sandy,
quite a few.
not very many Teslas out here.
What else do we have?
Yeah, there we go, okay. Okay.
I mean-
I am gonna give you, somebody, a time to kind of give us some more feedback onto the record for staff too.
Oh, I had one more in terms of giving feedback. I was looking down at the Walgreens site when that was done, and on the sidewalk portion, maybe even a little bit more buffering of civic, a bench of some arbor or something between
Yeah.
the drive-through
idea.
and the
Like
street.
In this area here, maybe.
Yeah, I can't bring it.
Is that just gonna be
Showing
striped, or is that gonna be
this area.
elevated, or what?
Is that what you're saying?
I'm seeing it
That's-
here,
That's a bump,
Yeah.
that sidewalk
Oh, it's a
over.
bump, okay.
something a little bit more, so to
So
kind
the
of
cars
soften,
go over with a bump?
Yeah.
kind of softening just the line of cars.
Mm-hmm. Like a,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that could be a condition based on the conditional use permit criteria of minimizing
I was looking at
visual, whatever it says in the code there. you
the
know.
Walgreens has a nice little covered
Mhm.
thing out front. It does look nice.
Yeah, no, it does.
And it breaks up the
Mhm.
drive-through or the pass-through lane behind it.
Yes.
I've seen people sitting there.
Yeah.
Anyway,
okay, I'll
Yeah, I'm looking at a
give the
picture of it,
applicant
that's a good idea.
time to, give us some comment. You might want to give some thought to buying time on the continuance, because we'll have our backs to the clock soon.
I mean, one thing I kind of want to know is like, what's the expected level of modification to this? Because, like I said, I have a very busy staff. If we're going to make slight tweaks to the staff report based on the testimony given tonight, based on some feedback and based on some notes that Dawn passed to us before the meeting, as far as just some small errors he found, I think we can do a lot of that in a decent time, but I don't know if we're going way beyond that. James is moving on to other projects too, so I just want to be very realistic with everybody that depending on what level of evaluation and work you want put into this, we would need more time before the next hearing.
Well, the proposal cannot change beyond in my understanding, the partition, the condition, and the 3 variances.
Right.
They can come in and add 4 more variances or take.
Yeah, no, those would be new applications. I mean, that would
Yeah.
start the 120-day clock over, that's for
Right,
sure.
but-
So, I mean, if they wanted to do that, they technically could. We'd just be renoticing it entirely. You'd be having a whole new hearing. Does the applicant working with a land use planning firm at all, or is there anybody that you're working with on that? I mean, I do think that, I get Kelly's point. I mean, to the extent that there is some polish that needs to be done on just some of the criteria and how those criteria relate to the evidence, that's going to take some effort. It's not that it needs a wholesale rewrite, but it's, there's been some decent points raised tonight.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
think
gonna-
one keeps coming up, several people testified on this whole concept of stormwater. I mean, it was brought up, and if it's brought up, it seems to me like it should be addressed.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the applicant needs to address it.
Yeah, I mean, it's ultimately their, their burden to show you that that's been met. I mean, that's any
Yeah.
applicant's burden.
I mean, I agree with what Kelly said. You know what, when an applicant wants some variances and stuff, it's like, they don't know if they're gonna get them or not. So they're gonna spend $1 million putting together a proposal to come in here and get denied? Generally, no. Generally, what they do is they come in with enough that you can get a decision to say, are we kind of headed in the right direction? So I understand that half-baked, half-not-baked situation, where you don't have to have every I and T crossed. But if something is an issue and if it's brought up by the public, it sounds like it needs to be addressed, because if not, it's a lightning rod. So I think that's something applicants should hear, and be able to provide some kind of an answer to.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it becomes an open question.
Well, I guess, thinking back, Kelly, to your point, I mean, there's going to be a new notice anyway. You're going to be renoticing it entirely to the same, 300 feet, whatever the radius is. So theoretically, you could have a quote-unquote ending tonight without necessarily having a date specific that you continue it to. With that date to be determined, maybe with additional discussion with the applicant and having a little bit better understanding of what the next steps will be, and then realizing that you're going to be putting out another notice. We'll have that ultimate 120-day date in there, so that, depending on how that piece works, at some point you're going to have to issue the notice and say we got to go.
Yeah, how would that play out?
Yeah, we gotta do something tonight
120
anyway.
days?
What's that?
If we did do that, just kind of to a date uncertain,
Yeah, well,
how does it,
it, it's,
what does
it's,
that
it,
affect the 120?
right now, you'd had, the clock would be running. I guess what I'm saying is, I think probably there has to be some discussion with the applicant about who's, the issues that were, in my opinion, the issues that were laid out tonight really deserve some additional look in terms of, at the very least, here are the criteria and here are the proposed findings that go along with them. And that's really the applicant's job to do that. Doesn't mean they have to go out and get a whole, bunch of experts in terms of staff report, stormwater and major sort of construction calculations, but just some of the core issues with respect to, here are the criteria, and here's how we're sort of showing that those criteria are met, kind of consistent with Dawn's point. I mean, you could certainly ask staff to take a run at those, but that's the applicant's job. And that's why I asked about it, whether they have a land use consultant, because I think some of that might be just a matter of, the language. If you have somebody that does that on a regular basis, they could probably look at a lot of that and say, okay, yeah, this is where we kind of need to connect these dots. But, short of tonight, just continuing it to, next month, you do that, at least you know where it sits on your schedule. I have no idea whether you're going to be in much of a different position come a month from now.
Well, then you just move it, you just go to another one.
Right. But some of that, again, depends upon whether you get an extension of the 120-day clock or not, because eventually, by law, you have to make a decision, the city has to make a decision, including any appeals. So at some point, the staff is going to say, we got what we got, you guys are going to be forced to kind of make a decision with what is here.
And we, to be quite honest, we do that all the time. We have every application submitted. I've never yet seen an application submitted that I would say is 100% complete. We always have to make some guesses on what they're basically, doing. We have to infer what they're actually talking about. The narratives are usually rather generic, just like the narratives are usually pretty similar. And so there's a lot of guesswork we have to do. And there's a lot of things that we have to do as part of that process. So this application is not unique in that sense. Most of the applications we get, they're not 100% complete. I've never worked on one yet that is. So
I think just to I think maybe state the obvious in this case, though, also you've got some pretty specific issues that have been raised by opponents that we have to respond to one way or the other, right? I mean, that's also part of the process. So that's the other thing I'm thinking is just in terms of who's going to be kind of carrying the water on doing that response.
Well, and the other thing that's maybe they're new to Sandy, you kind of have to work the clock backwards. If we were to continue this to a date 30 days from now, just to throw something out, that doesn't mean the staff shows up on day 29. You have to have the stuff probably in 2 weeks.
probably a month.
Yeah, that's my
If we
point
did it,
is
it's a
that,
month away.
there's a process that has to go on. These guys got work to do, but then that work goes to them, and then they do work with it and get it to us, and then goes that, so.
Yeah, I mean, we have to take it, and then it's at least 2 weeks before that staff member can write up new findings. Probably more like 3 weeks.
Yeah,
And then I review it, and then we kind of talk about it, and then it has to be a week before it gets, we had to publish this a week before so you guys can read it, and the public and everything else, so.
My suggestion is we pick a date, we
Yeah.
continue to that date certain, and then if we go with that date, we go with that date, and if we don't, we don't.
Yeah, your point is that just by moving it 30 days does not give 30 days of work.
Yeah.
No,
No,
it's,
not at all. It's
yeah,
about
that's
a week
where
and a
you'll
half,
take a
maybe.
recess and these guys talk for a second to put
Yeah.
together something that's reasonable.
That's what I think I think staff and the applicant might want to just chat for a bit. I think that's a good idea. And figure out what that timeline looks like.
Let's take a recess and
Yeah.
let them do that.
Yeah.
Can we
That's
do
what I
that?
was saying.
Yeah, I mean,
Make
you're
sure
not
it's
talking
a
with the,
recess.
it's not, you guys aren't involved in that. I mean,
Right.
that's just staff and the applicant talking.
Just like we did last meeting, they had a caucus.
We'll take a
Came back with an
recess
answer.
and you guys won't. Love it.
What, 5, 10
5
minutes,
minutes?
whatever?
5 minutes. I think
Give
last
us,
week.
give us like
10.
7 or 8 minutes.
It's always
to
five,
think about
it's always
it.
5 minutes.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
always
to me,
fine.
it's.
Move this over. Right,
I'm always there.
What's the setbacks in C1 for vegetation, is there? Not the 5 foot, like, I don't see two, it's 5 foot.
Read us everything we'd already read.
Setbacks for,
For, like, the C2 is 5 foot vegetation around the proximity of your lot.
5 foot in or 5 foot wide? So you're talking setbacks, it'd be 5 foot in.
What
Five-
I
and
really
add-
wanna know is.
And then 5 foot at least of vegetation.
Layout, right? Not the stuff that I already read.
No, I was just wondering in terms of their landscape plan, because they had brought that up in the back of the lot.
We're talking about well, it's
Trying to find one that it's just so,
Good, you.
gets so near.
I don't know what it is.
Isn't it?
It's like, who did that?
What's this lot?
Yeah, somebody without a straight rule.
So how
Yeah.
quickly do you think you guys
Isn't that
can
the-
turn around something with response to what they're saying, as well as maybe what justification is what they're looking to do?
Oh, yeah.
Is the audio still on? I think I have to change the arc on it and line the leathers fixed up the shell, you know, and then, you know, it's like, it's a
I feel like we're judges and the jury has just returned, you know? And somebody's gonna hand us a little slip of paper and
Yeah.
we get to read it.
All right.
Any, what did you guys come up with? Anything to? Right, I said I would give the applicant time to give us so many comments, so we will do that. We're still open.
Very brief. With regard to the variances, I appreciate it, and the conditional use, I appreciate the point that we did not necessarily fully articulate that. I think a lot of that we try to put in writing, and we commit to beefing up the language on that, and particularly, like you mentioned, Dutch Bros has 2 3-ton HVAC units or 1 5-ton unit. We'll screen it. So I appreciate you. It's nice that for us, and we'll work to clarify particularly those variants in the conditional use request. I have sort of the same line of thought about putting the building, connecting the sidewalk wraparound and talking about that. At this point, to find out that option is on the table, and that this is where we arrived and are comfortable with creating this site plan after numerous iterations, including ones that we shared with the city of Sandy. We think it is a very delicate balance between fundamentally meeting the requirements of the Dutch Bros brand, but also very much localizing and respectful of the context. Everything from the landscaping on the back, which trim trees in the back lot. I think tonight it'd be helpful, and you can talk to staff about it, if we could kind of identify the key areas that you want to see more effort on our part. You can fill out this application, and then we can work to mitigate those concerns and proactively address whether it's pedestrian activity or across the side, or hitting the bench and kind of create a more richer civic experience on the frontage. So we've invited staff to either send over a summary of key points from the meeting that we could address, or we can work together to put together a list. And then we set up June 24th for a next meeting. We agreed to extend the 120-day deadline. We can confirm that writing tomorrow and set a finite date, and if we don't want to get back to being on the burner, we can extend it again if we need more time. We want this to be we've had a very thoughtful, productive relationship with the city of Sandy so far, and we'd like that to continue. Hopefully not over the next 30 years.
Nicely said.
That's good. Okay. We just want to kind of reiterate what things we would like to see further. I think we discussed all the variances.
Yeah.
Enough for the applicant to get our feel on what might be helpful.
Yeah, I think if they,
Stormwater is an
between
issue.
staff and them, if they can address the comments that were given by the public, I mean, we need to say what they are. They're on the record for that. I think stormwater needs to be addressed. I think the trees need to be addressed, because those have been brought up.
Right.
Want to show all the trees that this application is following through the same scrutiny as any other one. I would like to see myself, and then just kind of I think you said a richer experience along the highway, along Proctor. You know, something that would kind of soften the drive-through lane as it approaches the covering.
Yeah. Here, the idea of maybe the applicant looking down at Walgreens and what they did with a couple of, it softened, and since you've got the drive-through, which is the same thing they had, that's what they did. They built a couple of covered seating areas.
Yeah. Down kind of to the, anyway, towards the west end of the property. And just in terms of I'm taking the staff has it for the vegetation plan in the back and the screen with the residential house factor, that's, I'm assuming that's all adequately covered in there. I look at the aerial and you have the people's backyard back there and, yeah,
We could evaluate it further too.
yeah.
Well, I think the issue that was brought up was if you come in at night and headlights going straight to the north, there needs to be adequate screening to where those don't go into the backyard of the houses, that's all.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And uniquely enough with the code, it typically has screening between different zone districts. Since it is the same zone
commercial.
district with a legal non-conforming, it doesn't have that requirement, but they can definitely look at additional mitigation elements or rendering of the type of foliage they're gonna use or something like that. But I've noted it here and we'll pass that along. They're here.
Yeah, that's kind of the good neighbor there.
Yeah. I always want to have the neighbors.
So there's two houses.
I mean, what are you guys expecting on this contaminants concerns from DEQ? I mean,
I think DEQ needs to be responsible for that, don't they? I
you
mean,
want us to reach out to them and see if they have any follow-up or any more information passed along?
I think it'd be good to know, though it may be outside of our purview for approval, to know exactly what's the status of it in layman's terms. You go through it, you talk about things that have been done, the tanks come out, you did good history there. But at the end of the day, it was clear that there was still some thing left that was detectable.
or was there?
And it's obviously of concern in the testimony to the neighbors. So I think we need to have enough information to know kind of maybe what's there. Obviously, we got to defer to the experts.
Right.
And I know the city doesn't have an expert, so DEQ needs to tell us, but maybe the applicant can, facilitate that.
And I've heard like in Gresham, I'm not sure the exact street on Burnside, but it's where the Wells Fargo bank is. There's Dairy Queen across the street from it, right? That was an oil site, and nobody can work in there for more than 8 hours. There is something in terms of, I'm serious.
Never getting a dilly bar there again.
No, it's across the street, but,
No, you can't,
the Wells Fargo-
you can't go to the bank for more than 8 hours.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the bank.
It's where the bank is built was a site similar to this.
Really?
So, but again,
Somewhere, somebody put that restriction on.
Yeah,
for some
so-
reason.
Wow.
but we just have to rely upon the experts that we can build on it and go.
Well, there's that, but then I think it doves in with the wastewater. The bottom line is, the concern is if whatever there is, it's gonna end up in water, and where's that water gonna go? That's what the testimony basically was, so, regardless of what's there, if you get the wastewater figured out, that's gonna at least be the mitigation for anything that's basically there.
And if everything on the site tilts towards the catch basin is taken off, then I would see the neighbors have nothing to complain about or be worried about, right?
Well, they don't have to complain or worry about it, but
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna point out one thing here real fast, if you don't mind. We did bring it up in the pre-up, and I thought James, oh yeah, he did, on page 33 of the staff report. We did talk about, just because it hasn't been discovered or finalized, that we did have some concerns about landscaping on the site, actually, because to me, it's kind of odd to put landscaping right in contaminated soils. So we did have some additional stuff that if additional soil analysis and obtain approval from DEQ prior to development. If not, it would have to be like in raised units essentially. So we can try to get more information on that too. But again, it's been very hard to get information on whether it's suitable or not.
Yeah.
For
Oh, you
the
got it right
landscape.
there.
All right. I think both parties kind of know what's on the drawing board, and I heard the beginning of June 24th.
I move we continue this meeting to June 24th.
Second.
Moved and seconded to continue it to June 24,
2019.
2019. Can we do a voice vote?
Sure, I just want to clarify then that everything's staying open. Your hearing's open, record's open, so we're really just picking up as best we can where we left off in
Don't talk to anybody about it.
2 months. Yeah, and then,
Or just be ready to declare it.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Nothing, motion carries. Continued, we'll see you back in 2 months. With, what else was on that day? That PGE one?
Yeah, there's something else on this one.
Yeah, we might move that one till July. I can go over that in my little staff recap if you want, kind of what's
Oh,
going on.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. We'll give you a break and get home. Well, we continue.
Talk to you soon.
Come on back. I got all my stuff.
See if we can participate in this one.
Galleries.
That's cool. I think I got mine.
Well, I find out now. My Fitbit started not doing well. I wouldn't get another Fitbit.
I feel bad I didn't say anything in that one. It was all being said over there, so just listening.
No,
Most of it's
and
usually
they were also
Did I say it all?
related to, they give a lot of money to
Those two? Oh, really?
my,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
because my,
That's $100.
my
Yeah,
cousin
you're
lives there and everybody.
Okay.
Ron said 25.
We're gonna,
Okay.
we're still in
Guys.
session.
I don't need this thing to take.
We're still in session.
Sorry,
and
Gary.
Who's that? Oh, Todd. Glad to see you back.
You have to stop working in this.
Kelly, Kelly,
What'd we say? Everybody left.
I just wanted to mention a few things here. So one of the reasons why you don't have more minutes before you right now is I still have to look at the March ones. I can't go into it too much detail. We have protection rights and laws, but one of my employees is very sick, very sick. So some of the workload's being passed to other people, and some of the slack's having to move to other people. I don't know when that person will return to the office either. So basically, some stuff will be coming in later than you're expecting, and that's just based on workload. But we will try to get the March ones to you at the next one, and possibly the first April 8th ones, maybe at the next one. I don't know. I did want to bring up, so at the May 28th meeting, which is the day after Memorial Day, it's a Tuesday, and so we're going to have the SAM presentation, the same lady that came and spoke before, the Metro, or the transit lady. Michelle, I think was her name, kind of blanking on her name. And then we're going to have an annexation proposal pretty close to Jacoby Heights there, actually. And then also Fun Time RV, which is a proposal to locate additional RV storage in our downtown. So it's going to be very interesting based on the conversation tonight.
I mean, are they proposing to do it on the lot to the east that we already talked about?
To the east.
So a lot of the stuff that was raised tonight, just keep in mind for that night as well.
Is the annexation the Bloom annexation?
It's the Bird annexation. So the Bloom, there's another one called the Bloom annexation, and that one, we just got notice today, was it? I think it was
Yeah.
today.
It's today.
Yeah, today's Monday.
Yeah, that was today.
The county's processing the exception or the removal of the historic root cellar finally. And if they do decide to remove it, then we'll proceed with the annexation once that occurs. If they don't decide to remove it, I think it gets a lot more complicated. Because if they're not removing one of their resources, why would the city remove it? I don't know. And then June 10th, we're going to be talking about stowaway self-storage, which is down there kind of in the hole, the industrial hole. And it's some storage units that were put on the site. And now they're asking for some variances and approval.
In reverse?
Uh,
Have we seen this movie before?
I mean, down there off of,
You know how there's stowaway mini storage? It's an existing mini storage facility. It's one of the two down there in the pit.
yeah.
The pit is what I call it. It's actually kind of right behind, yeah, it's kind of on the other side of the pond across from Reuben. There's a mini storage facility there. It's kind of behind where the gas pumps are.
Mm-hmm.
That's the place. And so they added additional structures there without permits. And now they're coming back through to try to get design review approval and variances. So that'll be an interesting one. June 24th, as you now know, will be the Dutch Brothers continuance. And then July 22nd, I don't know what it's going to be yet, but it's most likely going to be the PG Line Center. And then as far as just other permits we have cooking, we We just received, so Emily's been working on the final order for Jacoby Heights, which you guys just ruled on, but she's still working through it. It's a lot of rewrite. We have some smaller applications I don't really need to go into today. The appeal, just to give you a heads up on that, the appeal that you guys denied, the setback variance that you guys denied for the structure in, what street was that? Rachel, council overturned that, and they upheld the appeal request, so they're gonna be allowed to build to the setbacks, the reduced setbacks with the conditions as recommended by James. We just got in another design review to modify Mike Maiden's buildings. If you remember, we approved those to be modified and then tied like this ordinance. And
Like 2 years ago?
Yeah, and now they're proposing even different changes, so we'll see.
So do you think are they planning on doing something or just?
Yeah, no, he is actually. He actually closed the foundry business. That's all, yeah, it's closed like as of like 3 or 4 months ago.
Close
And,
The foundry.
Maiden Foundry.
Maiden.
And so he's dividing that into 3 rentable spaces and doing a lot of stuff in that site there.
I know he sold off a piece to one of the electric
Yeah,
companies.
Kyle Ruthard, the owner of Bull Run Electric.
Yeah, Bull Run. But part of that property you're talking about where the foundry was, it had a lot of internal movement issues. And so we had talked about that before, was they were going to have an exit, possibly going back to Industrial Way.
Oh,
But
yeah,
now
they
that-
they
now
still
that's-
would.
They still
For
would?
his site, yeah, they have like an access easement, I believe.
Oh, good.
When we looked at that pre-app.
Oh, good. I'm happy.
Yeah,
Well-
actually, he
And
just came
September
before
1st.
council on the 15th because his property was tied to the Maiden properties. So when they got upgraded, his was gonna switch to I-1, which meant he was gonna have to build a Sandy-style building. He didn't want that because it's gonna be like a total industrial use, so he paid and had the ordinance modified to read that his won't get changed.
Which one? The Bull Run Electric?
Yeah,
Mhm.
and it's off like a flag lot of
Yeah.
industrial, you can't even really see it.
No, I'm just glad to hear they still have the potential to go.
Yeah, no, I think they
Good.
have a recorded easement through there.
Good.
Yeah. The other big one that I'll just bring up tonight is Space Age Fueling Station. We actually got the application last Monday,
Oh.
and that has like a ton of variances and requests.
Space Age Fueling
Down in
Station.
Orient,
Yeah,
in 26 in Gerald,
26.
where the
Oh.
light is.
yeah. And other than that, I mean, we have a lot of little
Yeah, you
small ones,
probably
but I don't know, I want to go through all those.
These
but-
guys didn't realize when
Do you,
attorneys
do
are
you
testifying,
feel
you
good
better
after
start
your
taking
discussions
notes.
with the applicant tonight about,
It had been a long time since she's been here.
Yeah, I'll tell you something.
I think
Um,
they'll
or
provide.
do you feel you've got what you need, or that it's gonna,
It's a delicate balance. I mean, so you got, I don't want to go into too much because that's kind of done, but, you got a site that hasn't been used for decades. You got a pro-growth council, quite frankly.
Let's not get into too much detail, because,
Yeah, it's not getting into
Yeah.
too much.
no, let's not get into
Let's
too
not.
much. Yeah.
So.
No, I just, naturally,
Yeah.
these conversations, people want to talk, but
Yeah.
there's going to be enough on this one. This one is not going to stop with you guys.
Yeah.
yeah, no,
Obviously.
I was just more curious.
Which one?
You felt-
Which one
you
isn't
felt
gonna
that you
stop?
were
This one.
work together
Yeah.
to get us something.
I think
It's
so.
going to be appeal for
in
sure.
2 months.
Yeah, I think so.
That-
Yeah.
That would be,
Yeah.
We're gonna sum up for them, and I think they just need to beef up their justification. I think as a staff have done a pretty decent job, but hearing it from them is important. I
Mhm.
can agree that I was not terribly impressed. I know it might not be a wonderful term by their application and their justifications, but that's what we were provided, and that's what I had to go off of, as well as just our experience and the code. So
Okay.
I think they will. I think they've heard you loud and clear, and will get that justification for us.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's true.
I
What do
do
you make
believe
it?
they explained that their phase 2 DEQ would be completed in mid-May, so they would have that information.
That's
They
great.
might even invite their consultant, I believe who they called, to the next meeting to discuss that stuff with you guys, if you have any specific questions.
Well, they're smart enough to get the A-team together.
And we would have seen it, but 7-Eleven, the property owner there, had no comment?
I don't know if we should go into that.
Yeah,
Okay, that's fine.
you're gonna hear it again.
Yeah. I mean, we had a letter, but I think it was from the people who own the, my guess was, because I couldn't tell there was no address on it, but we had a letter, and they own the mattress store because it sounded like, which is the old Napa store.
Yeah, yeah, I saw that. Took me a
So
second.
was that, I mean, was that from them? The people who own the mattress store gave us a letter?
Not that I'm aware of. I think it was a single family home.
I'd have to look at it, but, you know,
Yeah.
we only had a couple, and it's because they didn't give their address, but they were like Napa LLC or something. I went,
Oh, that one.
Yeah.
yeah, must
I
be
saw
the
that.
owners of the Mattress World store.
That's where Napa used to be.
On a very different subject.
Okay.
But tied in with planning. I was trying to think how to phrase it up correctly. We have the transit lady coming back in, right?
Michelle, yeah.
Mhm.
Michelle, excuse me.
6:30, yeah, next meeting, 6:30, to survey our motors.
And, but with that is, trying to do this so it goes back a little bit to council in terms of the long-range plans for transit within the city. You know, we hear a lot about Bell Street being pushed through, 362nd, which I think in terms of planning is probably the biggest thing for the city to get figured out a plan for. And so is there any talk in terms of dates or trying to figure out how to make that happen, et cetera? So I'm talking about
I'm not
the-
sure, what's the
I'm talking about
question?
I'm talking about the 362nd extension,
Yeah.
Bell, down to
Mark.
Orient, that
You'd have to-
whole piece.
You'd have to ask your council representatives on that one. Because they're either gonna have to get land dedicated,
Yeah.
buy it,
Buy it.
buy land, or
Or vote
the
for the
big
gas
ED
tax.
word,
Yeah, yeah.
eminent domain. I mean, I don't know if they're, and then but you're still buying it, just at a fair
Right.
market value, but I haven't heard any progress or any updates from the people above me, essentially, so I don't know of anything that is happening that, you know, was different than 6 months ago. You know, we are gonna be looking at, we kind of analyzing the whole transportation system around Sandy through the TSP update. But as far as specific goals or ways forward on specific roads, like what you're talking about, I haven't heard anything in addition to what you guys know about.
Is there any noise at all about about Skipper's Land being developed?
Not that I'm aware of.
'Cause I mean, if that were to happen, that's where 362nd would pop through.
Yeah, so for that land to develop, the one to the east of that, Lundine's has to develop, because that's where this 362nd
That's
line
my
has
point,
to
and
be.
that's the stumbling block at this point.
As far as I'm aware, that I don't know if there's been much progress made. I don't know. I think Stan would probably, because I think he was the one kind of spearheading that, so I think he would have a better understanding where that's at.
Well, the city's always taken the position that the Lundin, Skippers, whatever, if they want it, they'll build it and put the road in. I just going through, in terms of doing this for a number of years and looking at different studies, is that, another way to do it is the city can come in and take that land and put it together and put the infrastructure in place, which I would like to, that's what I'd like to see. And so that portion of the city gets built out more correctly. That's gonna be, yeah. That's gonna be where our future, maybe not residential growth goes, but office park, commercial, et cetera. Anyway.
Well, I
And
thought in one of the council's proceedings a while back, I thought they changed one of their goals. Sandy's always been development pays for itself, and they changed that. Am I correct?
Yeah, I think you're correct, yeah.
Well, and to me, that was a major message, because that says that what Ron's suggesting is you put the road in, then the people will come. Sandy's never been that way. It's like when the people come, then we build the road. And then we only build a half road. So they can build another half of the road. And you just admire these places where you kind of go in and here's this nice big road, that's out in the middle of a field, and they're gonna develop it, and they got the road in first. Now, obviously, it takes seed money to do.
And I can give you a little heads up on that. So the two options that I'm aware of that you'd be able to build that road with, if the Lundins and Skippers and everybody agreed to it, is that you would either use like some sort of transportation monies like SDCs, or I know that they were talking about if that gas tax, I believe, went forward, or I'm sorry, not the gas tax, the DEQ increase went forward and we get that portion, then they'd be able to loan off that, off the expected revenue that would generate over years. And then the other option, so it's either that option really, or the other option is to use urban renewal money, but if you do that, I think you kind of are limiting yourself, because then you probably won't be able to do that much at the community campus at the same time, because you can only borrow on so much, you know. So I don't know, I think they have two options there, or the third option is just to wait. But if they want to get ahead of it, I think that's the two funding mechanisms.
Let's get Costco to build, got her done.
That's, there you go.
I mean, Costco in.
Well, I mean, when she was going through and showing the trolley, et cetera, and the accessibility around town, that having that connection made back on Bell is just, I think is just key to kind of the city being more livable on it. If you look at Bluff,
Yeah.
which I'm at all the time, and I'm really not saying this because of my business, but at 7:30 in the morning or 2 o'clock, whatever in the afternoon, it is, you know, 30 buses all at once
Yeah.
coming together. So anyway, just congestion.
Wasn't that prior gas tax that went down in flames? Wasn't that tied to some funding for some of that, right?
Yeah, that 3% gas tax increase that we tried like 5 or 6 years ago, 5 years ago, right?
It wasn't that long, was it?
4
Did
or
you,
5 years ago.
Yeah.
sorry,
Not
did
long.
you say
Okay.
that?
Well, we had a mayor who campaigned on, he was gonna solve the traffic problems.
Right.
Now, there's no money, no free lunch. So if you're gonna solve the traffic problems, you're gonna need to have money to do it. So, you know, the same
See
people
now-
who campaigned against the gas tax here in Sandy now say we need the money. So you can't have your cake and eat it too. You gotta, I mean, how many people buy gas in Sandy then go up the mountain? How many buy gas in Sandy that don't live in Sandy? Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I do.
I do think
Yeah.
they estimated though, if that, what is it, $25 increase? The DEQ increase?
You're talking about the Clackamas County thing now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't followed that.
Or no, it's not DEQ, I'm sorry, I keep.
It's a vehicle registration.
Vehicle registration fee that
DMV.
Clackamas County would be doing.
DMV.
I
The
don't know
amount
what
of
the-
money that you'd collect per resident would be enough to get a loan to do the highway, a portion of the Highway 3 or the 362nd and Bell improvements.
The center lane.
Yeah.
assuming you could get the land.
So,
Correct.
just one more
Correct.
quick thing I wanted to follow up on, because I know we need to end, but did you say that our next meeting, we're gonna start at 6:30 in the
Yeah.
transportation? Just so you know, I participated in that day-long thing, I guess it was half a day. Anyway, it was fascinating, and I really was impressed with the young woman who's running it, and I think that'll be really informative to the planning commission, because that's so important for how to build out. So anyway, I was really impressed with the way they ran it, and I've been to some of those before, and she was impressive.
Is that gonna be part of our meeting or is that gonna be work session?
Work session before? or-
Part of the meeting. you
Part of the
said.
meeting, just because we don't know when it's gonna end, so then we can just
Oh.
start the meeting right
Oh,
afterwards.
got
I
it.
think that's what we do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
The meeting will be starting at 6:30.
Okay.
So you guys will get a lot more of those coming up, because we're starting the transportation systems plan. We've got a consultant on board for that. We're negotiating. Got the Parks Master Plan. We're gonna be setting out the RFP in a month or two here. The transit stuff that you're already kind of involved in. You know, I'm sure there's gonna be stuff around the sewer treatment plant, Sandy Community Campus, so there'll probably be a lot of presentations before you over the next couple of years about master planning, so just be prepared for that.
Okay. Well, let's take a motion.
So our next meeting is the 28th.
Correct, yeah, Tuesday the 28th of May.
Are we gonna see anything on Jacoby again? We're done with that?
Okay.
Yeah.
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Send us a quick note, let's still know how it worked out.
Okay.
Been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
9:40 for the record. Thank you all.
Thank you, James.